evening, everyone. Welcome to the special board meeting of the Novato Unified School District. I'd like to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some people didn't put down like what they were, like she said air conditioning, but they didn't, some said the floor.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start off with, we didn't have closed session, so there won't be any report out about that. We'll go on to our first item for tonight's meeting, and that's the approval of tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to move?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Trustee Mack, Trustee Scott. All in favor? Passes 7-0 the agenda to approve tonight's agenda. And now we're on to item 3, and that would be public comment on agenda items. And please, if you do want to address the board, please fill out a blue card. Looks like we have quite a few here. Feel free to, when I call your name, you'll come up to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. All right, so where are we going to start? We're just going to take them in order, I think.
Yeah, you're taking all those now. Are you going to take them when they talk about each?
Okay.
So I would say go over 5A, B, and 6A.
Okay. So let's do tonight's meeting, just so you guys know. As you can see on the agenda, the first item we're going to talk about is the bond project, and what we're doing and the process and how it's coming along. Secondarily, item B, we're going to talk about the air conditioning at our schools and some temperature data. And then the last thing, 6A, we're going to be talking about the baseball field and the turf field. So that's kind of the sequence. If you want to speak to any one of those would be your spots. So we're going to start.
This is 5B, this is all the turf fields, and these people, I don't know what they want to talk about.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So just speak at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we could go to item 4 as approval of tonight's consent agenda, unless you would like to move.
There's one item on the consent
There is one item.
I would like to discuss it
Okay.
very briefly. I propose we do it now.
Okay. Is that all right with the board? That's fine?
Yeah,
Okay. Just.
The one item on the consent agenda is an application for state funding to support the San Marin STEM program. And this is just us authorizing the board. This is the Board of Trustees authorizing the district to proceed. And I just want to bring it to the attention of, here's one more case where Novato is going to state financing and alternative sources to build programs for Novato's kids, and commend staff for the proposal. And I would like to, I believe we ought to approve this evening, but I wanted to note that we're looking for state funds to help our Novato kids in the process. And with that, I would move approval of the consent item.
Okay. Thank you, Ross. So we have a first and a second. Trustee Nell, and then all in favor of the consent agenda, approving the consent agenda. That passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, now we're on to our first study session item, and that's item A, Bond Facilities Project Update and Program Summary, and Yancey Hawkins and Mike Woolard will be presenting that. Welcome.
Thank you. So to go over our agenda tonight that we'll be going over, the first is I will briefly go over an overall facilities program update and talk about some factors that are impacting our costs as we move forward. And the second thing is I will talk about some of the things that we will be doing to address those cost increases due to those factors. Then Mike Woolard, our Executive Director of Facilities, will be going over a project-by-project update on all of the projects, Measure G projects that the board approved in May and in August, the final project that they approved. And the third item, we'll be going over a facilities program communication plan. So we've finalized a draft of what our facilities program communication plan is, and Mike Woolard will be going over that plan. So there are a couple of factors, three main factors that are impacting our costs as we move forward. And unfortunately, all three of them are in what I would call the wrong direction in terms of cost, obviously increasing potential costs. The first is external factors. Between the May and November elections in 2016, when Measure G was passed across the state, $28 billion of other local school bonds were passed. And locally in Marin County, there is currently over $800 million in local funding, including the College of Marin, both San Rafael school districts, the Dixie School District, and Kentfield. Along with that, in November, they passed proposition the proposition for the new $9 billion state bond, which Trustee Millerick was discussing, that we're applying for some of that funding. So that's an additional $9 billion of school construction that will be going on, as well as even more locally and specifically the North Bay fires that occurred weeks ago, and over 6,000 structures that have been destroyed in the North Bay. And due to where we get a lot of our construction and where we get a lot of our materials and most importantly labor out of is a lot from out of Sonoma County. And so those North Bay fires and the additional construction work that will be going on over the next 5 to 10 years plus up there is going to have a cost implication to us. We'll have to be seeing how much those will take in the form of escalation, just the general cost of construction going up. The second item is when we looked at our master plan, the master plan is our prioritization of needs, our construction and facility needs within the district. Those master plans included 2 years of escalation in the costs, which, as the board approved that in the summer of 2016, or I think in June of 2016, they included escalations to 2018. An example of how this will impact our project is the Performing Arts Center at Novato High School. That is a 4-year project and is scheduled to be opened in 2021. And so there will be escalation all the way out to 2021 on that project. And on high dollar amounts, when you start getting into the 6 to 10% potential escalation, that's going to cause some upward cost impacts to our project. The third item is when you look at the facilities master plan, really it's at a 50,000 foot level. What are the basic needs of your sites? What do they really need to do to move their programs forward and to have quality facilities for our students? That master plan is really at a 50,000 foot level. When we start getting to detailed analysis like we're going to get to tonight with the Novato High School secondary field, you go down to the 5,000 foot level. You get a lot more detail, including topographical data. You get soil samples. You get all kinds of additional information that will change potentially for your project. A good example of this on 2 different levels is when we look at the San Jose air conditioning project. We looked at it and they had some basic cost per room, and we went back and looked at that. All of those things made sense, and that was the basic costs. When we went back and we were looking at the fields, on the other hand, when we did topographical studies at both the fields at San Marin and Novato High School, there were large grade changes on both of those secondary field locations of 4 feet in one case and 9 feet on another. Also at Novato High School, there's some naturally occurring water underneath that, which requires some different. So you can have additional information coming to you that can cause additional costs. So obviously, I think the natural question is, what are some of the things that we are doing to remediate against some of these impacts? The first is that last year we had a bond implementation committee come together. That was over 50 people representing all of our sites and as many constituent groups and members of the community as we could. And they went through and they prioritized what they determined were the highest, most important priority projects in the bond. So we're doing the highest priority items first. The second is included in that work was the looking at escalation and projects that were most prone to escalation as a factor in how we decided on those projects. So the 2 STEM centers at the high schools and the 2 performing arts centers at the high school, these are 4 of the most complicated projects that we're doing in the entire bond, and thus most heavily impacted by potentially escalation. And that's one of the reasons those projects were brought forth. Another thing that we're doing is we're looking at our financing plan. So as of right now, we have a financing plan set up as the 4 drawdowns on the $222 million. We've been lucky in the first 2 years. Our expected property tax or assessed value growth was 4%. And over the first 2 years in the project, we've gone over 5% over those 2 years. So we'll be looking at what potentially we can do to either do a next round maybe a little bit early to get some projects going a little bit early and stop that escalation, or keeping it at the same and maybe drawing a little bit more down on the second as we've got that additional assessed value that we can work with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Woolard, and he's going to go on a approved project by approved project look at where we are.
Thank you, Yancy. Good evening. All right. Microphone. Try not to bend over too much. So what I'd like to do tonight is, just as Yancy said, go through the first round of approved projects that you all approved earlier in the summer, and have a list up here. It's a little bit different framework than you've seen before. Basically divided into sort of the overhead cost for the bond and the projects. And then we have sort of district-wide projects. And then I'd like to get into the site-specific projects at the sites that were approved. So basically, also this is sort of the framework I'd like to present. It's kind of a rough dashboard. Tried to use the same sort of format for each project just to give you sort of a bare bones what's going on. Upper left, sort of a descriptor of what the project is. Lower left is sort of the financial schedule data. And for those that have some photos and visuals of what's going on to help you kind of get an idea of what we're doing out there and how it's going. And please feel free to provide any comments if you like something different in the future. Happy to do whatever y'all like. So for administrative support, again, it's sort of the overhead costs for the project. Includes salaries, my salary, my staff of 1 salary. Most importantly is the bond issuance of the 4 that Yancy just mentioned. It's about $200,000 each issuance, so that's a set cost. And of course, the required audit that we need to have every year. We just had the folks out here to start doing that, so that's a little bit of a cost as well. So basically, this is we estimate about a 10-year project. If you look at the cash flow, it's about when we should expend the money. Looking to go out to about the end of December 2027, and as of the end of this past October, spent about $165,000 on sort of the typical overhead costs and an additional $200,000 for that bond issuance cost. The status, it's obviously still in progress, and of course won't be completed until 10 years. Next, start getting into the fun projects. So the first one I'd like to go over is the district-wide IT classroom toolkit. As a reminder, the Technology Advisory Committee came up with a standard IT package they'd like to see in all the classrooms on all the school sites. Includes a short throw projector and a monitor, increased Wi-Fi coverage. Standard whiteboard as a projection. It's also dual use to write on for classroom use, voice projection system. The photographs you see are actual photos from campuses down in Southern California, but it's the exact type of equipment we're looking to put in. It's pretty good jump in technology from what we have in some of our classrooms and should help a lot. look at this as a 2-year project. Estimated completion is to be right after school starts in 2019. As of end of October, we have not invested any money in this yet. We're still sort of in the planning stages, figuring out what to do. The current plan is to get a classroom as a sample to kind of put out the options and have the teachers sort of kick the tires and see what works and what's not. So we don't want to jump out of the box and do a bulk purchase and find out that's not the right stuff. So kind of taking it slow, and we're working on getting some classrooms out there to get those outfitted shortly, and then get teachers in there and try it out and get all that feedback before we make the bulk purchase. And so obviously we're still in the planning stages on that one, and still on schedule to try to have that completed by just after the beginning of the school year in 2019. By the way, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them as we go, or if you'd like to save them up and hit at the end. It's either way.
I think, why don't we get through your presentation and we'll,
Sure.
if you can save them, and we'll do them at the end.
Okay, next one is the infrastructure update across the district at the school sites. This is a big focus on some of the issues we have at individual school sites. It upgrades the main data frames at the school sites, and also, if y'all been to some of the school sites, it's those kind of boxes you find in a janitor's closet or some other multi-use space where they most likely shouldn't be, but those are the the IDFs. They're one of the intermediate sort of data frames where the wires come in and then the connections go out to the various things. This involves installing a lot of new cabling within the site. Obviously expands the Wi-Fi coverage that we have and we'll go over it in more detail in just a second, but with the addition of all the Chromebooks to all of our students over the next couple of years, it's a huge load on our current bandwidth, so we need to upgrade pretty much our whole infrastructure so we can support that without problems and issues. Also, switchgear. This is the fancy IT stuff that nobody ever sees. It's in those closets that only a few select get to go in and try to figure out what it is. There's pictures or examples of those. The device or the cabinets you usually see in those janitor's closet and stuff are those kind of black boxes in the bottom middle, hung up somewhere in the ceiling with a bunch of wires coming in and going out. The pictures on the top and the one on the right are actual pictures of current things we've done with proper cabling and proper organization and connections. The picture on the left is a picture of an existing site here at the district building. That's an example of some of the stuff we have out in the field that we need to fix and make it look like the other two pictures. Again, this is a 2-year project. Estimated completion date is just after the beginning of the school year in 2019. To date, we've spent about $500,000 of the bond money, and that was mostly the switchgear and a lot of the big purchases that we've started installing. We're finalizing the planning phase and getting ready to come to you with a schematic design for some of the bigger construction items we're going to do. Again, much like the previous project, we're looking to do a sort of a test case at a site to sort of kick the tires and make sure we're getting buying the right things and getting it set up correctly so that it works. And then once we kind of prove that design, then we go out and do the rest of the school sites. It's a very ambitious schedule. I'm sure that's weighing on your mind. It's a lot of work at a lot of school sites for one summer season. But that's the goal right now, and we're still looking like we're going to be able to stick to it. Okay, next project is the One-to-World, the Chromebooks. This project, as you remember, is every 3rd to 12th grade student will be issued a Chromebook over a 3-year period. The first purchase we completed last spring, got all those in over the summer. IT department did an awesome job getting them all configured, and we issued them out beginning of the school year to 5th, 6th, and 9th grade students. Interesting is the picture is the first actual Chromebook that was issued to the first student. I'm sorry I don't have the student's name, but it's at Linwood. It was Andy, the principal, there with Betsy from the district, and Teresa Cook, our site IT person, was there on hand to do the issuance. So that was kind of a milestone event. So that's our first phase we completed. This is a 3-year purchase project with 7 more years or 6 more years of refreshing. So in 2018, we're looking to do 4 more grades, 4th, 6th, 9th, and 11th, issue those to all the students in addition to the 3 that already have it. And then in 2019, again, we order in the spring, configure them in the summer, issue in the beginning of the school year. Start of 2019, we'll do the remaining students that don't have them. And so then by the beginning of 19, every student will have a Chromebook. And then 3 years after issuance, we're looking to replace it. These things don't have a long lifespan. Technology is always changing, as y'all know. So built that into the project plan here, where we're replacing them 2 times after we initially purchased them. So it's about a 10-year duration for this one. Looking to end about the time the bond ends, beginning of the school year 2026. And again, to date, about $500,000 to purchase that first round of projects. Since we're buying for 4 this spring, it'd be a little bit more than that. But we've got a great plan. It's working, and we're trucking right along on this one. Next one is district-wide project is 21st Century Flexible Furniture. This is that interesting furniture. I've heard some people refer to it as the Dr. Seuss furniture, but it's really kind of cutting edge, and it's really good at how it mirrors up and matches and supports the PBL theory in classrooms and how you're teaching with project-based learning. The project in the master plan, the estimate was based on outfitting 1/3 of all of our classrooms in the district with this type of furniture. So it's not the entire district, but it's 1/3 of all the classes. Again, we've tried to do this in a phased approach to make sure we're purchasing the right furniture to fit the bill for our students and our teachers. So the first phase we've already done, which was to purchase sort of our showcase classroom, which you see pictured below. It's at the Marinnovation Center. I'm hoping that's what we call it now. I've heard it referred to as 3 different things, but it's basically the building over there by the Makerspace and the Novato Library over in Hamilton. It's a pretty neat space. As you can see, it's a pretty large classroom, and we bought kind of a variety of furniture that you would see at different grade levels, from the elementary school up through the high schools. Try to give you a wide variety of what to look at. And right now, we're sort of in that showcase process. We're inviting teachers and trying to have group meetings and get students through there to just try it out, wheel it around, sit around. How do you like it? Do you not like it? Try to get some feedback on that to see where the interest is. The second phase of this project, we're looking to get those teachers at the school sites that really support the PBL and really want to reinvent their classroom, kind of use those as classroom models at school sites. I think the goal is 1 per school site and 2 for the high schools classrooms to do that. So phase 2 would be kind of taking some input from this showcase, making those purchases, outfitting those classrooms, trying those out for a year, and then after that, compiling all our notes together, and then phase 3, doing that bulk purchase for the rest of the classrooms at the districts. This one we've earmarked 3 to 5 years. We're trying to make sure we have enough time to buy the right stuff and figure out a process with how to select those classrooms and the teachers to try it out. And then when it's 1/3 of the classrooms, how do you figure out what that is? We want to give some time to make sure we have a nice selection process and do a great job of that. The model classroom, showcase classroom, was a little over $36,000. Interesting watching those folks put that together. If you thought IKEA was hard, you should see some of this stuff. But it was pretty interesting and fun to watch. So we finished the first purchase, and the rest of this year we're looking to use it as a showcase. And I think some of you have actually been out there, and some of those we should probably put warning stickers on. Those green things are actually exercise balls covered in plastic or fabric. I thought it was just a chair, and I bounced off and was sitting on the floor for a quick second. But they're really neat, so I highly encourage everybody to get out there and take a look. Next project. Now we're getting into site-specific projects, and we're going to start with the high schools, where we have a lot of our bigger, more costly, longer scheduled projects. Novato High School Performing Arts Center. As you remember, this was construct a new 450-seat theater, about 18,000 square feet, give or take. Some of the progress we've made on this, each high school, we did a selection process to hire an architect for the site for all the projects at that site. Novato selected WLC. It was the same firm that provided our master plan. So they were very familiar with the site and jumped right in. We also, previous board, you approved the hiring of a theater consultant. We hired the Shallot Collaborative. That has been a great progress with not only the development of the high school performing arts centers, but also they're evaluating our performing arts program district-wide, and they're working on that report. We did site visits to all the sites and took copious notes and got a lot of input from teachers and administrators, so it's really neat. I'm looking forward to presenting that to you at a later date. This obviously is the bond's largest scale, complexity, and cost project. It also take the longest to build. Currently, we're working on a site location. Where do we put an 18,000 square foot theater on the Novato High campus? There's obvious places where there's open spaces right now, but as you try to fold in the synergies with where it is with the rest of the performing arts classes and MSA school and all that, so we're still working on those options with our site committee. And speaking to that, probably one of the greatest benefits of this, or the most successful parts of this so far, is our site committee. We have it at both high schools. So for Novato, we have some administrators, we have teachers involved heavily in the planning and helping us with the schematic design. We have a theater consultant. We have Todd Lee from Greystone West, who's out in the audience, and you'll hear from him later tonight. So just great synergy with this team, and able to get through and work out a lot of the questions and issues. You know, right now we're getting the customers' requirements, what they want in a perfect world. That's kind of how the design process works. You know, what do you want, and then we whittle it down to what we can actually cost effectively build without breaking the bank. So it's a great process. It's very successful. We're having a good time. We meet every couple weeks on Mondays, about an hour and a half with each site, and it's very successful so far. This project is planned to be about 3.5 years, hoping to have it done by January of 2021. It's one of those where we start construction late spring, early summer of the school year, so over the summer we do the bulk of the really noisy, dirty ground movement type of things. So those are done when school starts, and then we're constructing over the next school year through the summer and then into the half of the next school year. So it's a pretty lengthy construction season. So far, with some of the consultants and testing and surveys we've done, it's about $40,000. That will go up quickly. Guarantee the next time I present this, we'll have a much higher dollar figure. And again, we're in the planning phase and working towards that schematic design to present to you at a later date. Another great project at Novato High School is the STEM building. This one is described as a 5-classroom, 5-lab, kind of central lab prep space facility that's roughly 15,000 square feet. And again, WLC Architects is involved with it. Much like the TAC, we are working on a location for this building on that campus. Again, trying to make sure we put it in the right place. So last thing you want is a brand new building that's out there by the football field track that's not close to any other classrooms. So very important on where that is placed. And once we identify that location, that really helps us drive in sort of the full scope of the project, and then we get into more of the scheduling and details like that. And again, much like the Performing Arts Center, the site committee for this building is some teachers and administrators from the site, along with our architect firm, our construction management firm, and district staff here. And it's gone very successful so far. Very good progress. Again, we meet every couple weeks, and we go over a lot of stuff. And in this particular case, we are also in the same phase where we're gathering requirements from the site, what they'd like to see, what's possible. We're also kind of educating at the same time what's out there now. And these photos you see are examples of some current STEM-like classroom buildings built at other high school campuses. It's kind of interesting. I wanted to give you a variety. The one on the right is what you call a very flexible room. The sinks and gas and kind of the hardwired items are all around the outside of the classroom, and inside is just those movable tables, flexible space. And the one on the left is obviously a little more fixed with the traditional, lab intensive, gas, tables, sinks, all right there. So not as flexible, but still the state-of-the-art space. Again, this one is a 3-year duration. It's a little bit less construction time than the theater. Looking to have it complete at the beginning of the school year in 2020. And again, to date, spent about $23,000 on consultants and some of the site surveys and testing and hazardous materials testing and those kinds of things. That will go up quickly as well. And we're sort of the tail end of the planning stage, really trying to get into the schematic design part to bring that to you at a future board for review and approval. Moving on to, I believe, one of the other projects at Novato High School is the practice turf field. This intention of this project was to build, it's about 89,000 square feet, which fits a regulation size soccer field and men and women's lacrosse field. It's intended as a multi-use practice field, but it will be built to CIF standard, so it can be used for official games. It replaces the existing grass field that's there now that I'm sure most of the students will agree that it's full of gopher holes, and if it's not a swamp pit in the winter, it's not used very much at all. Also, in an attempt to help, and I've seen it firsthand, I live up behind San Jose Middle School, and I've often seen the freshman baseball team practicing, playing, and prepping the field down there. I didn't realize that they play. A lot of times they don't have the opportunity to play at Novato High School due to scheduling with the one baseball field. So in an attempt to help alleviate some of that off-site practice, we're also designing this to have a portable backstop. Even though it's not a full-size regulation baseball field, the intent is to give them a safe, drained place that you could possibly practice and not have to haul the team over to another site off the campus. To protect this asset, it includes a 6-foot-high security fence around the field to make sure we don't get some of those uninvited guests on there to damage our nice investment. This project is 16 months in duration. We're looking to complete it about this time next year. Again, starting construction tail end of the school year this spring, and then through the summer and then into the fall. To date, the end of October, about $20,000, again, mostly surveying and soil testing in this case, and some CEQA evaluation. And we're at the schematic design phase right now. In fact, that's the one discussion action item we'd like to present later tonight for this particular project. And I believe the last project at Novato High School, I can actually say one we've completed, yay, was a combined project at Novato High School and also Olive Elementary School with some much needed deferred maintenance sewer repairs. We used one contractor to do both sites, and I was, as you can tell, I'm a civil engineer, so I think I took too many pictures, but it was a great project, very fascinating. Of note, obviously the issues were clogged main and sewer laterals, not very exciting stuff to talk about in public, but much needed project. Some of the bathrooms at both sites were unusable, and we identified a lot of problems. I won't get into details. I don't want to, it's around dinner time. So a lot of things we fixed, a lot of problems we corrected. Of note of this project is the schematic design budget was presented at just over $400,000. But because we used sort of it's not a newer technology, but it's not used a lot, we used pipe bursting technology. Traditionally, you'd have to dig a trench all the way down the length of the pipe you're replacing, pull out the old one, put in the new one. Very labor intensive, very costly. This technology is where they take a PVC pipe, kind of put a missile head on it and pull it through the existing pipe, and they burst the old pipe. By the way, this was the original pipe from construction. It's terracotta. So when you go buy a plant at Home Depot, if you drop it, that's what our sewer pipes were made of. I'm sorry, now you're going to go home and not sleep well. But that's the technology back in the day, and we replaced it with PVC that doesn't corrode. It's impenetrable. It resists root infestation, and it is much better. So they basically just pull it through the old pipe, burst it out, and that way you're already guaranteed it's the right level, and you don't have to trench anything. You make access holes every couple hundred feet. And it's very exciting to watch. They did it a lot faster than I thought, and it was obviously came in a lot less than what we thought it would be. So here's one where I actually saved a little bit of money. And as you all know, we my one success for the whole. Okay, I'm done. Here's my retirement letter. So we were able to use a local company, which is great, and they've expressed interest in bidding on future projects, and unfortunately we're going to have future projects of this nature. We did have one change order, and that goes back to our couple discussions, many meetings, of we had the wrong as-built, and we thought we had a certain size pipe. Turns out we dug it up, we had a wrong size pipe, and we had to order a new one. So one minor change order, but a very successful project. We completed it officially at the end of July. The construction part came in a little over $177,000. There was some design part in there, so roughly it's about half of what we estimated. So it was a good success story. Okay, on to San Marin High School. Much like Novato, we are looking at their Performing Arts Center. They have an existing one, and we're looking to renovate it. As you can see, as you all know, it's a very interesting design building, an octagon shape, not exactly conducive to a state-of-the-art Performing Arts Center, but we're looking to do our best and having a lot of success right now. Much like I expressed before, we have a great collegial site team that's working, theater consultant, and the local staff administration at San Marin. And this San Marin actually picked QKA as their architect firm. We've done some work with them in the past as well, so they're very familiar and done a lot of these types of projects, as has obviously the theater consultant. So it's a great collaboration that we're really enjoying. And we're looking to get a 250-seat capacity theater out of this. And right now, we are working on, this one's actually progressing really well, finishing up the planning, getting into some of the schematic design, some of the layout options for the actual space. Again, we meet every Monday, every couple weeks, and those have been very, very successful. This project looks to be about 3 years in duration, hoping to have it finished at the beginning of school year 2020. To date, very minimal expenditures, but that's going up very quickly. And we're breezing through planning and getting into some schematic design and hoping to have that here at a future board meeting. And obviously the picture there is the satellite view of the site and an actual performance in the building of one of the performances they put on. So very, very cool project. Also at San Marin, we have, much like Novato, a STEM building. This one, same kind of principle, 5 classroom, 5 lab, central lab space facility. This one's a little bit bigger, 18,000 square feet. Again, we're using QKA and the local site committee. And I gotta say, this committee is one motivated group. The folks from San Marin, the teachers and administrators, really are on top of this and really have done their homework and know what they want. And it's just been made this such an easy project and a lot of fun to go through. As you can see, we've actually identified a site here on San Marin. And I apologize that I probably didn't blow it a big enough scale to see exactly where it is for everybody, but it's sort of next to the softball field where the portables are, next to the music art building, and sort of catty corner to the PAC building there, and just below the makerspace building. So that area, we're looking to put a single story, 18,000 square foot building. I'm working on design layouts right now of how, with the different science and math classrooms, how they want them oriented to how best to teach and outfit that. Again, this is a 3-year project, looking to have it done beginning of school year 2020. To date, about $25,000, and that's rapidly going up as we proceed with the planning and the schematic design. And really like the progress on this and keeping that momentum going forward. Another project at San Marin, similar to Novato, is a second practice turf field, multi-sport field, just like I explained before, same size, same goal of a multi-sport field. It's CIF regulations for games and practices. And of concern here, we're still identifying options, and the reason for that is when we did the survey, I'm sorry the pointer doesn't work on the TV, but initially the plan called for putting the field this way or this way on the baseball, second baseball field here. And when we did the survey, it was a 9-foot elevation difference from home plate to right field pole. That's a lot. Great if you're playing right field, you're running downhill to catch all those pop flies. But from the engineering world, it is a lot of work. You basically kind of cut a slice of cheese on the high end and you flip it over and you fill the low end. So overall, we would be raising the elevation of that space, a couple of feet. Bottom line, we'd lose the baseball diamond. And to build a new diamond would further increase the cost of the field. So that was sort of a showstopper at first. So we're looking at other options to what we can do on this campus. And I know a lot of you are here interested in talk about that later. So we've looked at various options on that second field, trying to keep the baseball diamond and turf something in the outfield. We've looked at can you put something on the varsity baseball field, turf it, and put some kind of field out there. So we're really trying to open up and look at what's possible to both meet the school site's needs and also make sure we're not designing a Taj Mahal field. So we're keeping an eye on cost. But it's interesting. There's definitely some challenges, and this goes to the point of what Yancey made earlier is as you get into some of these projects and you start getting these details out, you just don't know what you're going to get and kind of get a wrinkle and have to deal with issues of a tremendous amount of dirt. Who thought dirt would be a problem? So again, this one, similar timeline, it was, but because we don't have an preferred option to present to you for schematic design, right now we're not able to pull this one off on this existing schedule. So we're going to continue to work on options and bring something forward. But to date, a little over $20,000, again, mostly surveying and consultant work. And we're still working on that preferred option for schematic design. Okay, and the last one at San Marin High School is the stadium sound system. Sort of a smaller project, but this is in conjunction with the lights project, which is not a bond project, but it's a cost savings by combining them together. And this is basically buying the equipment and wires and speakers you need to replace the sound system there at the stadium. And it will be a dramatic improvement. Technology's come a long way in a short time, so much like you'll see when the lights are installed, how you can project those down. Very specifically, the same thing with sound. So we're excited to be doing this project. And as we're working on a new press box as well, that's where this equipment will be housed and protected. This is a short duration project, about 18 months, looking to have it completed by January 2019. Currently haven't expended any money on it yet, but we will soon. We have a sound engineer to do an acoustic study that you all approved at a previous meeting, and that's happening very shortly. So we're still in the planning phase of this one, and as we move forward with the progress of the light project, we'll enfold this one in as well. Okay, moving on to San Jose, great school. Installing air conditioning here. I said that because my kids go there. Sorry. Looking to replace, to ensure or to install AC at this campus. What we're looking to do is reuse as much of the existing infrastructure that's there. So basically what we're doing is every classroom has sort of a heating source, a furnace in the corner, has individual ductwork that goes just to that classroom, which is sort of a good thing when you're doing this. So we're going to pull out the old furnace, put in a new, more energy efficient heating and cooling unit in there, use the existing ductwork and controllers. And the only thing we have to do is provide a little more increased power run from where there's enough power coming to the site. We just have to make increased power runs from the main feed to the individual units, and we're good to go. That is an 11-month project. We are working furiously on that design now, looking to have it done by the start of school year next year, 2018. I think even today I just signed a couple more purchase orders, so daily that one's going up, but as of end of October, just over $1,000. We've got a lot more consultants and engineering work into it now. And we're looking forward to bringing a schematic design in here very soon. On to the other middle school, SINALOA. The project approved was a new gym. This was a 16,000 square foot gym facility, which included a full-size basketball court, a bit more bleacher space, and new locker rooms associated with the gym for the PE classes. Current gym space is undersized and it's cramped with the loading of students at this school. There are multiple options we're looking at. Obviously, one of them is tear down the new gym, build a brand new gym, lower space where they have a lot more room. Of course, that's a costly option because gyms and locker rooms are expensive square foot things to build. So some of the options we're looking at is, can we expand that building somehow? Maybe build new music rooms that are on the left end in the photo here, build those at a lot lower cost somewhere else, and then expand the gym, make use of that space. So we're looking at those kinds of options to see what's available. This is a 3-year project by the size of the construction, depending on what we do. Haven't established a rough schedule as far as when we plan to start. This is one of the projects in the first round. It's sort of, I call it a flex project, where depending on how funding comes in from the others, we might have to delay it due to our limited income from the bond issuances. This might have to just delay slightly until we get that other bond issuance. Haven't expended any money on this to date, and still in the planning phases of what we're doing, looking at those options. Okay, on to Linwood Elementary here. A couple things. This a lot of projects at Linwood. This is for all elementary schools. It's getting a lot of work. As you can see, it's multi projects we're combining here. A new community center, a new pre-K classroom building, and also a new classroom building with additional classrooms due to loading. Our goal is, as we do these classrooms, to get rid of the modular buildings we have. They're old and hard and more expensive to maintain. As part of this project, we also realized we need to redo the food nutritional services area. The central kitchen is at this location. We're looking to relocate that somewhere else because we need the space to use as part of these other projects. At the same time, Linwood was also scheduled to get air conditioning and again, get rid of those portable classrooms. A lot of work going on there at Linwood. Again, it's about 3 years to do all this, and this is similar to the SINALOA one, where we're looking at parts and pieces of this, but it's sort of one of those flex projects that depends on how the funding goes with whether we're able to get it with this first 2 issuances or we need to wait till the third one. But the first domino in this one is we have to we have to relocate the food and nutritional services central kitchen before we can do some of the other stuff. And on to one of our deferred maintenance projects. As you recall, y'all approved this. We were intending to do it this past summer due to some interesting bids we received that, what was the term you had, Todd? Predatory bidding. They were really high. Somebody was going to get a couple of new toys at our expense. So we elected to not award this project and to effect some repairs, actually which we just did some of those this past weekend. I was out there crawling around the roof and they found, no surprise, some holes and some leaks, and we are addressing those, and we have one more day to fix some of those. So giving us sort of the Band-Aid fix this year, and then next summer, or this coming summer, we're going to replace that roof. And it's all 3 of the pod buildings plus the K Kinder building. That's a small one in the picture there. It also replaces all the flashing and mounts for the mechanical units on top. And if everybody's seen San Ramon, they've got a dark brown wooden fence, kind of a circular one, that's at the top of each roof, built more like a fortress, but that hides the mechanical equipment. And that's unfortunately what's causing a lot of the leaks, is the way that was installed, the penetrations in the roof. So going to redo all that and give us a nice new roof and no leaks, and improve that one. So it's about 40,000 square feet of roofing. Our estimate is a little over $1.7 million. So summer projects, we're looking to get it done over the summer, about 2.5 months, and hopefully have it done before the start of school, 2018. We spent about $60,000 or so in the design part of this with the architect, and just waiting to go out to bid. Matter of fact, from your approval last meeting, we're looking to go out to bid in December to get it on the street early for some of the reasons Yancy talked about. And the market's already picking up, and talking to, in fact, the roofing company that did some of the repairs for us this weekend, they're already filling up their workload for the summer, and it's we've had one rain really, so it's kind of a sign of the times and what we get to look forward to in the future years. So we're trying to get ahead of it and get as competitive bids as we can. So we'll be having that out here in the next month or so. Okay, with that ends the project portion. What I just want to go over really quickly is sort of how we're approaching the communications for the bond projects and stuff. Or do you want to do questions? Sorry.
What do you think? Do you want to?
This will take about 2 minutes.
All right.
I just wanted to show you that we got real fancy and able to figure out how to use a PowerPoint with movement on it. So, no, seriously, real simple, pretty basic communications plan. You want to have timely, transparent, accurate communications to a variety of audiences and all the information that's going on with our bond projects. Call it the Golden Triangle. The intent and focus, what we're looking to do is, definitely want to generate excitement. The superintendent's really excited. Found out we saved money and he couldn't contain himself. But no, generate excitement with the public and reinforce to the community, thank you for passing the bond. This is what we're doing with the money. Be inclusive, the community. It's not just the district, but teachers, students, staff, public, neighbors, everybody. And want to generate that interest. We're looking to, just like that bottom left picture, celebrate the ceremonies, the groundbreaking ceremonies, get advertisement out there, what we're doing, your tax dollars at work, here's what we're building, here's the new facilities to help our education for our kids. And delivery methods, I am getting educated daily, literally, on all the things. My kids are teaching me to tweet and Twitter and Facebook, I kind of know, but email, all the electronic options we have out there, in addition to the physical ones, the school newspapers at the high schools, the city papers. Get those architect renderings we get approved, schematic designs from you, post those out, let people know what we're doing, what's coming. Physical mail, letting people know, for example, around the high schools when we start doing these big multi-year projects, I'd like to let the neighbors know what's coming, and so if you see a bunch of noise and activity, this is why, this is what it's for. And of course, the last one is probably the most important, is the face-to-face contact. Never underestimate the importance of this. A lot of different meeting venues we have opportunities to present information. This is a great example. We want to get the information out there and let people know what we're doing. Chance to ask questions, answer questions, and get a pulse on the community. So I know this is really bad slideology here. It's hard to read, but just basically it's a matrix we developed of kind of how often we want to talk to people, kind of what venue, what's our communication mechanism, what's the purpose of the communication, and then, you know, what's our messaging target. So we put some thought into this. We're working really closely with Leslie. She's helping us a lot, and looking to present this to you in a final form at some point to get a thumbs up so we can march out and start doing some of this. As we start doing some of our projects pretty soon, I'd like to get some of that visibility out there through signs and messaging and basically good public relations with the community, so everybody knows what's going on. So with that, my favorite slide of every slideshow. Now I am more than happy to entertain questions.
The end of your process. Thanks, Mike. Very good. Trustees, Greg, do you want to start?
This came up with the IT or the TAC, Technology.
Advisory Committee?
Yeah, advisory committee. Thank you. And distribution of Chromebooks. So this year we distributed 3 grades worth, and it was a very painful process. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. It was a painful process, and I don't think we finished it until about 2 weeks ago. Next year it's going to be 6 grades, and then the year after that's going to be all 9 grades, and then we're going to have a replacement cycle in there and all that. My question is, are we going to sign up to redistribute these things every single year, or are we going to let kids keep them over the summer for 3 years?
That's a great question. I know it's being discussed. I will defer to Yancy to. Did we make a decision?
So a decision has not been made on the final. The Technology Advisory Committee has started to look at that. There are obviously both positives and negatives towards that, but absolutely that is a concern of bringing them out in the beginning of the year and also collecting them at the end of the year. It's also a significant process. So we've been working with other school districts that have fully implemented a 3 through 12 or a K through 12 technology 1-to-1, and we're working on seeing what they've done and working that out. But the decision has not been made.
So we'll take it offline.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then furniture, eventually 1/3 of the classrooms. What's the methodology we're going to use to decide which 1/3 of the classrooms and which levels?
Right. We've been discussing that. We don't have an answer yet on that one either,
Okay.
but it's definitely been raised on multiple venues, and very important question to answer. I think for master plan purposes, money-wise, they go about 1/3 of the classrooms. And I think the intent was to leave it open to figure out how to best do that, whether it's you focus on the secondary schools, elementary schools, the middle schools. We don't know, but we're definitely starting some pretty intense conversations to get that dialogue going.
Okay.
So we can get an answer.
Offline again. Got it.
I can't tell you, I'm sorry, to answer your question about the Chromebooks, we did take some copious notes on how well or inefficient the pass-out process went. So they did identify some things to correct and do better next year, so it's not as clunky and a little more
Okay.
efficient. So.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks, Trustee Mack. Trustee Miller, and then Trustee Aguilar, and then Trustee Scott.
In a big, maybe, I don't know who to answer this, in the big sense of the overall program, we've identified some specific projects in this evening's presentation, and my understanding is that those are covered or expect to be covered by the first amount of money we've taken from the bond authorization. Our total authorization is $233 million, I believe.
222.
222. Okay, so does this represent 1/3 of the way? Is this the first third, the first half, the first 3/4 compared to the whole project? So I get a sense of a big picture,
The bond
30,000 view thing.
The Bond Implementation Committee was tasked with prioritizing the first $104 million of the $222 million. So got about 118 to go after that. So it's a little less than half of the projects. It's a lot of the larger dollar projects. So it's about 14 of the 38 projects, depending on how you break down the projects. So it's some of the larger of those projects.
All right, thanks. Trustee Aguilar?
Okay. Well, first, I like to just after seeing this whole thing, this is very, very well done. I really think it was very clear. I do have some questions about. Can you talk a little bit? Well, and I like to just say that this is so great that the room is full. I wish that it was always like this every Tuesday, you know. But so this is really important as far as. Can you talk about the grass fields in Novato High? Why we decided the fake grass versus the natural grass. Just kind of give a little pros and cons of why we went that route. So that
Trustee Aguilar?
yes.
I would almost suggest that we talk about that on, if it's okay with you, if we could talk about that on item 6A.
Oh, okay,
If
perfect.
that's specifically
That would
what
be
we'll be
great.
talking
Okay.
about.
You talked about the kitchen in Linwood. I thought it was going to be renovated, right? So
The kitchen
the
at Linwood?
kitchen.
The central kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
looking to relocate, but the prep kitchen that you have at every school site, that will be renovated and part of the
Okay,
project. So
so-
there will be some site prep space at that site, much like other sites,
Okay. Well,
like at San Marin and San.
thank you. And just again, so just wanted to keep the neighbors in mind. So when all this construction is happening, keep the neighbors in mind and not do 6, 7, 8 o'clock morning work and let them sleep.
We'll be sure to follow the city noise ordinances.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we go on, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew there were some empty chairs here. If you want to, standing in the back, you're welcome to come sit up in a chair. Got lots. All right, Trustee Scott.
Okay, so a couple questions. At San Marin and Linwood, the portables, do we own those? Do we rent those? If we own those, where are those going? What are we doing? Can you talk a little bit more about the portables? And I don't know if we lease or rent those. I know that we might have a little mix of both, but help me with those two sites.
So at Linwood, we own all of the facilities that are ours. There are a couple portables owned by Quality Care over there, and one of our preschool partners, so they own those. But all of the buildings that we do, we educate students in, we own those facilities. At San Marin, it's a mix. We own a majority of them. We own the ones in the back where the plan for the STEM center is going to be.
Right, so that's my question. Where are those going? If we own some of those, where are those going? Are we going to sell those, create a little revenue? I'm just curious what your thought process is in terms of if we're going to be building out on that site, where are we moving those to and what are we doing with them?
So those will be used at first for temporary housing during construction, so we don't have to buy some additional temporary housing. And then depending on the age of those, they will be, because the STEM center is going to be about 18,000 additional square foot of space, that those will no longer be needed, and it's one of the site thing. So those will be moving off the campus. If we need them internally, that will be the first look, but most likely they will be sold at the end,
Okay.
or disposed of if they have no value.
I know storage is always a need at various sites, so I was just curious what the plan was for that, if it was storage, selling, turning them back over. Okay, I was just curious. And then my other question is, for Novato High and San Marin, you were talking about the committees. I'm just curious in terms of student engagement, are any students serving on these committees, and are students having a voice in what's going on at the campus involving these items?
So students were involved on the facilities master planning, and as well, Jeffrey served on the bond implementation committee to prioritize. They have not been serving, as a lot of those committees have been meeting during the school day, and so it's a little bit more difficult. But they've been getting feedback. But at this point, no student has been serving on the individual project committees.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Butler.
With the, as we heard, rising costs of construction and depleted construction companies to get work done, and I already had 2 projects that you're holding off on, SINALOA and Linwood, based on what the other projects come in at. So what is our ability to adjust our projects that we have in the master plan and change a project up? What is, I know we have a specific bond language that we have to follow. Is there wiggle room in there to change the project?
So I think you hit it right on the head. It is the individual. It's the bond language that the voters approved. Now, the facilities master plan was the basis on which we developed the bond language, but the bond language isn't facilities master plan. It is very specific language. It was made, it's not as specific as to give the board and the community flexibility as we move forward, as potentially our needs change over the next 10 years. But it is specific to the language that the voters approved. So it would be project specific, whether it would still fall under the bond language. But I think as maybe you're noting, as we add projects and already in a world of increasing costs, that means that likely there's some projects that we won't be able to do.
Yeah, that's what we're faced, I have a feeling. Okay.
All right. Anyone else want to chime in? Or I have several blue cards, so I just wanted to make sure the public knew that you all knew that at this point, if you'd like to speak to what we're talking about right now, that's great. We'd love to have you come up. If you want to speak to the Novato High Field issue specifically, if you could come at that point, 6A in the agenda, which is not right now. So if you'd like to speak with anything that was on this presentation, now would be a good time. I've got several, John Griffin, Nita Gibson, and CC, you didn't write on here what you wanted to address, and if you wanted to come talk now would be an okay time. Yes, right to glass, please. So, any of those want to come up now? Okay, John, Nita, and CC will put you in at Novato High then. Okay. All right. Anyone like to speak to anything about that we've been discussing now? Okay. Do you want to come on up to the podium then?
I just had a question.
Yeah, that would be you'd have to come up to the podium and ask that because it's televised, and come on up.
Well, it's just a basic question.
Sure.
I wanted to ask just basically about all these projects. Are any of these going to be LEED certified, or is there a big focus on sustainability, and then after all these larger buildings are created, being more energy efficient, energy efficiency is sustainability?
No, I'm not in my head. I spent some time in the military, and we always strove to try to get those when we could. But I'll let our construction manager, Todd Lee, who's done a lot of these, answer how we incorporate that.
Mr. President, just part of the process for people watching
Sure.
at home and in the recording, if the speaker could repeat the question, so we
That's a
know
good
what we're
point, Derek.
addressing.
Thank you very much. So, if you could just repeat what was asked.
I'm sorry. The question that was asked was, what are we doing to incorporate LEED energy efficiency into our designs and our buildings for the projects that we just discussed?
Thanks.
So schools typically are not done to LEED. They're done to CHIPS standard, which is Coalition for High Performing Schools, which is kind of an equivalent rating. And the district is committed to doing all of their projects to CHIPS standards, which, along with modern Title 24, is about the equivalent of a LEED Silver.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring it back to the board. Trustees, any more comments? Questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Yancey and Mike. And now we're on to item B on the agenda, temperature data and cost analysis for air conditioning district-wide. And Yancey and Mike once again. Okay, Mike first.
Sorry, I just spilled my water. So previous board meeting, there was a request to look at the rest of the district for those school sites that do not have air conditioning, and come back and sort of give an overview of sort of some temperature data, what's going on out at the school sites, especially given a recent hot day we had this fall, or I'm sorry, early start of school. And then second part was request to bring some cost analysis, what that would cost for the school sites that do not have air conditioning to install that cooling capacity in those sites. So what I'd like to go over today real quick is first just dive into some of the temperature data just to show you what's going on. Got about 10 years of recent data, and as you know, I love graphs. So going to provide a little bit of history here, what's going on locally, and then we have some school site classroom temperature data through our energy management system. Unfortunately, I think I broke the backbone of the thing asking it so much data. I have 4 of the 7 school sites that do not have air conditioning. I have classroom data for that. We're still working on getting the other 3. I will continue to do that and provide that to you as soon as I get it. I apologize, I don't have all 7 right now tonight. And then after that, go through sort of, we used a mechanical engineer, we walked the sites, we looked at what we had, similar to what we're doing at the San Jose Middle School, same kind of approach for these other school sites. Give you an idea of what's going on, who has it, who doesn't, and then what we would do to install it at the sites that don't. And lastly, turn over to Yancy to go over some of the options that the board has. At first, people thought this was my heart rate, but no, it's actually 10 years of temperature data. And I know it's a busy graph, but really I want to focus on the trends. So what we have are a 2-year average, a 5-year average, an 8-year average, and a 10-year average. And basically the blue dashed line and the red line are within the last 5 years. And basically we have a very similar temperature trend. This is over a calendar year from August, or school year, I'm sorry, from August to June. Very, very consistent weather pattern and temperature range. But what you'll notice is our highs are getting higher on the hot days and our lows are getting a little lower. Weather is cyclical, as you talk to a lot of meteorologists. You know, I'm sure somebody 50 years ago would say, yeah, I did that. But right now we kind of tend to be in a warming trend here in this local area where, again, the hotter days are getting hotter and the cooler days are getting cooler. So what does this mean in relation to air conditioning? So what I also did was those 4 schools, and it was Olive, Lou Sutton, Rancho, and Linwood. And this is data from last fall, from start of school until the middle of November, when we pretty much started turning on heaters in all our school sites due to the weather. So what you see here is average classroom temperature by school site. So for instance, the blue line is the average classroom temperature on each of those days, school days. We took out holidays and weekends over that school site. So Olive has roughly 20 or so classrooms. This is the average of those 20 classrooms on these days. And again, I want to point out the trends. On the hot days where we had outside temperatures 95, 96, 98 degrees, for example, at Olive, we had an average classroom of 81 degrees, 85 degrees, and 83 degrees. Again, that's an average. So there's classrooms that are over that, and obviously classrooms that are under that. But it's telling that when it's hot outside, at some of these campuses, it gets pretty hot inside the classroom. And because of the geography of the city of Novato, it's interesting to note that Rancho, which coincidentally did not pursue air conditioning as a master plan project, has a lot less hot classroom temperatures. Sorry, missed the red, the dashed lines are the only, I'm sorry, there's no regulations or no laws or no policies that tell you what temperatures you have to have in your classrooms or office spaces. The only thing out there is OSHA guidance. And OSHA guidance states between 68 and 78 degrees. There's a lot of studies out there that tell you the optimal temperature for a classroom is 68 degrees, maybe between 68 and 70 degrees. So the red dashed lines represent kind of the target area based on the OSHA guidance. And as you can clearly see on some of those hot days, some of our campuses exceed that by a few degrees. And some stay within that range. I'm sorry, Rancho is the green line at the bottom, and Linwood is the sort of maroon line up here that goes that way. So it's interesting to see that in the same, local area of Novato, you have, because of geography, some different temperatures. And all of these school sites obviously do not have air conditioning. And I just gave you the same data for the spring of 2017, this past spring. Obviously, the fall tends to be our hotter, warmer temperature days. The spring can have some spikes, but it's not near as hot as the thing. But we had a couple spikes in May, and as you can see, a couple of the school sites exceeded into the 80-degree range, 85-degree range for the average classroom temperature. So the trends I just wanted to point out were on the hot days, we have some really hot classrooms. I know there's been a lot of public comment and some information out there locally that people are concerned that classrooms are hot and it's hard to educate and pay attention to those things. So just as a reminder for everybody, the sites we have in our district that have air conditioning in the classrooms, basically the newer constructed, by newer I mean probably the late 70s on. We had some old facilities, but I'm sorry? Relative. But San Ramon High School, SINALOA Middle School, Hamilton School, Pleasant Valley, San Ramon. And any portable classroom on any school campus comes with an air conditioning unit for that classroom. So as much as people don't like the portables, some days my kids are ecstatic that they have geometry class in a portable because it stays a little bit cooler than the rest of them. And then, of course, the other sites that do not have air conditioning in the classrooms, the rest of the schools. San Jose does have an approved project we are currently working on. You just heard me brief that earlier. So down to what's it take to put AC into these schools that do not have it. Took a mechanical engineer. We went out, we evaluated site by site. We took an average of the classrooms. For example, at Novato High School, there are certain portions of that campus that do have air conditioning in a building or two, but for the most part, their classrooms do not. So what we have here is some estimates, and I gave a range because in the design, it depended on whether we needed to replace some of the existing cabinetry that holds the furnace we have in each of these sites. So the good news is, like at Novato High School, the master plan estimate was about $2.6 million, and current estimate we have with our evaluation, it's about $3.1 to $3.5 million. So not too much of a markup. Obviously, some of the reasons are what Nancy mentioned earlier. Interesting though, at the elementary schools, we estimated a little over $500,000 to put air conditioning in those school sites that had it. And the reality is it's about 1.3 to 1.5, 1.2 to 1.35 for some, but it's well over $1 million to put that in each school site. And I just wanted to note that per the master plan, we had 3 of the sites that had it in there and 4 of the sites that did not. And by that, I just mean when they were tasked with doing the local prioritization of projects, what their needs were at some point when we had to narrow down from the $500 million of identified projects the district needed to the $222 million. Some of the school sites elected that they had higher priority projects than air conditioning. And the last is just a comparison, different method of showing you the same data I just discussed. But just wanted to point out that if you account for the estimates in the master plan for the 3 school sites, net additional money that would be needed is somewhere between $6.8 to $8.2 million to install air conditioning at all of our classrooms at all of our school sites. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Nancy to go over some of the options that the board has.
All right, thank you. So there's really 3 options as we move forward and looking at air conditioning. We could go with the status quo, which would be following the board-approved facilities master plan, and that would include the schools with air conditioning in their master plan that has been prioritized and excluding the others. There will be, just as we noted, some cost increases in doing that, just to looking at the true cost of those installations of a little over $1.75 million. In terms of the other options, if the board wants to change, they could move the air conditioning for one or all of the projects into the facilities master plan. and the cost of that would be $6.8 to $8.3 million. And if you're looking at that, the board could look to the Bond Implementation Committee to review per prioritization. In that case, the recommendation from staff would be to include those when the other work at those sites would be done to get cost efficiencies. And then the third option would be if the board wanted to add the AC from the 4 other sites into the master plan and prioritize them now outside of the Bond Implementation Committee process and move. This would be more expensive than option 2 because they would be standalone projects, and we may have to go in as we work as state regulations change. We may have to redo some of that work as we do work at those sites. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions from the board.
All right, thank you, Yancy. Thanks, Mike. Just to remind the board, this is not we're not going to be making a decision tonight, but just for information, so we'll have a good, robust discussion. And then I do have a couple of public comments, so let's go around the table, and then Trustee Aguilar, let's start off with you.
Yeah, I was wondering if the charter school, is that under our responsibility? Do they ask, and I can't remind me again where they stood?
Well, the charter schools coincidentally all have portable classroom facilities, so they already have air conditioning at their.
They have their air conditioning. Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Aguilar. Trustee Miller, I think you had something.
So a couple of questions for you gentlemen. Does anybody see standards coming from the state for thermal regulations for classrooms? You said currently there's no guidance. Do we see any coming on the horizon?
Just looking at Todd Lee, who's been doing these kind of projects for a long time, but nothing on the horizon. Todd,
What?
Todd, you
I'm
like
going to
to?
repeat what he said since
Mike,
I got the mic.
I mean-
basically.
Todd, you want to talk?
Todd,
about-
would you want to come up, please?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Clearly, this is, with global warming, a pervasive problem that we're going to have to deal with coming forward, but at kind of the rate the state moves, I don't see anything coming anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. And clearly,
Short and sweet.
clearly there's things moving in that regard. A friend of mine's working on a seawall for the city of San Francisco long-range plan, and there's some big dollars associated with that project. It's global warming issues are coming, maybe not tomorrow, but so so I think that's. Is there any other criteria we can establish? Because it looks like we have some variations in our classroom performance. Can we, do we have the data classroom by classroom? We can do a more fine-grained analysis, or because in some campuses, the building on the west end of the wing is 10 degrees hotter than every other building, every other classroom in that wing. And it means the kids just have to leave that room because it's not 85 degrees, it's 95 degrees in that classroom, and it's not healthy to stay in it late afternoon.
Yes, I can definitely do a more detailed analysis and break it down by location of classroom on a specific school site, much like we had a little bit of information for San Jose Middle School. The Ignacio, the classroom's closer to Ignacio. I think it's the
West side or?
Yeah, I forget the wings, but those two wings are predominantly 10, 15 degrees hotter than the ones closer to their gym.
See, so if you have that data, it'd be great
I
to
can
analyze it. Thanks.
definitely bring that back.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Butler?
With the 4 sites who don't have it in the plan and were not considered at all, and they decide, you know what, we really want air conditioning, would the ability for them, could they go back and remove something off of their list of projects and say, instead, I want air conditioning? Is that an option?
I think it is. Again, back to the Bond Implementation Committee, you know, we have a set number of dollars, and the
Right.
projects in the master plan are based on that. If you want to do a substitute,
Right.
that I would say that's up to the site if they want
Right.
to change their priorities. And that's kind of how a master plan works. It's a living document that changes with the times and as
A little
things
wiggle
change.
room there. I'm not willing to use general fund dollars to give 4 sites air conditioning, to be honest with you. So if a site has that option, I think we need to make them aware of that, and I would be interested in considering that.
But I think it's important to note, and you made a good point that, and the point's been made before, that if we're gonna add something, it's gotta be something else has to be taken away.
Right.
The
zero
pot of
sum
money
game.
is a fixed amount of money, and, yeah.
Yes.
All right, anyone else? And then I'm gonna go to public comment. Trustee, no?
Yeah, my questions are more around process. So, you know, if we go back to the beginning and you were to direct me where air conditioning was in the master plan, could you do that?
I'm sorry.
Could you direct me as to where air conditioning is a district-wide project in this master plan? Page what? Page 33. Okay. So, and then the next one is, the way I understand, if I go to this slide right here, cost comparison by site, the schools without air conditioning that say none, is that as a result of the site construction leadership team at that site delegating that they didn't want air conditioning as an option?
Yes,
Okay.
as part of the process when they discussed, again, when we necked down from $500 million in needs to $220 million of available funding, some tough decisions had to be made at each school site, and they chose for those sites to prioritize higher other projects that were not air conditioning.
Okay. And so then what is driving this analysis and this additional information right now? Is this the result of the district's construction committee, or did these 4 sites come forward and say that they would like additional funding or to rearrange their funding?
Well,
Why are we talking about that
the
tonight?
board requested that we come back and provide some more detailed information. I'm sorry,
So, as the board recalls, we had an early release day because it was really hot and we felt that the temperatures in the classroom were not conducive to learning. And so we had an early release day. That, I think, combined with, as the board knows, and you can see from Mike's analysis, some schools are hotter than others. San Jose is probably the hottest, but I think, Loma Verde put it in their plan. Lou Sutton put it in their plan. Olive did not put it in their plan, but Olive is definitely, if you look at that chart, one of the hotter schools. So, not everybody at the site was involved in those decisions. When we cut back from basically, $500 million in needs got cut down to 222. So some of those sites said, okay, well, if push comes to shove, we'd rather have a new multi-purpose room than air conditioning or whatever. So, but other schools, as you saw, Lou Sutton and Rancho, the temperatures in those rooms were not as much, so they're not as concerned about it. So really, I think, Derek, it was a combination of realization that temperatures are getting hotter, probably going to continue to get hotter, and then specifically at Olive, where the temperatures are hotter, a lot of the parents and some teachers that were maybe not involved in some of those other classrooms said, hey, we feel like we need air conditioning at our school. And then that's when the board directed staff to go out and say, well, how much would it cost to put air conditioning at all the schools?
All right, so there's a reason that this is coming forward. It's something that concerns all of us, obviously. My concern is over process. And Trustee Butler's question was about if a site wants to swap out, one project for air conditioning, that's okay because it's revenue neutral or budget neutral. What I'm worried about is, if we have a 50,000-foot plan here, but I want to be real careful about where these ideas for additional funds to come from. And the way this is stated, it says we're going to need additional funds. So if they're not additional funds, then maybe we shouldn't say there are going to be additional funds if what we're talking about is just having sites rearrange their own money. So that's the first thing I think we need some clarity on. Are we talking about a district-wide effort to come up with some additional funds? And if we're going to do that, I'm going to have some real clarity on how we're going to justify that formula, because let's say I'm from another site and maybe not everybody who was really interested in a particular facility development did show up for those 1 or 2 meetings and feel like they got missed. And so now they would like to do some additional work on a meat freezer or just whatever it is. It could be anything, garbage disposals, you name it. But so I'm concerned about this can of worms. So I want to make sure that if we're talking about any site can move their allotment around within reason, I'm sure. But if this is an additional thing, I want to be careful about the justifications for that, because I think it's just going to bring everybody forward saying, hey, we didn't know about the meeting, and our what's the word? Our stakeholder, our stakeholdings, didn't get the attention we thought they needed. And I don't think that's the case, because I know we were pretty thorough, and we went through a lot of work to make sure we got these things covered. So, at this point, I guess I'm being asked to consider. That's what I want to know. Am I being asked to consider to come up to reallocate these funds from some other project down the road, or out of? And where would this? Well, that's a good question. Where would this additional money come from if sites didn't reallocate their own budgets? Where would we get it?
So that would be up to the board to direct staff, right? So you could either say, yes, we'll approve it, or we'll let the sites approve it, but they're going to have to take the money from other bond money. I mean, if you want to take Olive as an example, Olive's total was about $10 million in money that they received. So you could say, well, if you want air conditioning instead of, something else, then find the $2 million from there. And kind of let each site decide whether they wanted to do that, or the board might decide that you want to be consistent, and it's not fair that some schools have air conditioning and others don't. So we think that that's a high priority, that we just want all of our schools in the district to have air conditioning, so we can get that taken care of. And, we're going to pay for it out of, there's no extra money, as you just pointed out. There's no additional funds. So either this site pays for it out of its own allocation, or by reallocating other funds, we'd have to find it, and other projects wouldn't get done. So there's two choices there.
Okay. Could we, I know that we didn't build our plan based on fairness. We built it on need. So if somebody wants to make, I think what I'm seeing is more an argument based on need than fairness. Would that would be my interpretation. I know that I don't want to speak for the superintendent, but from a relative perspective, that's a tough thing to judge. So I want to make sure that any rearranging of our total budget is based on a high level of need, obviously for the purpose of education being the highest need. So I don't necessarily want to say fair, because that's a very difficult thing to achieve unless we're going to start over from the beginning. I got a couple quick, just technical questions. Marin Oaks High School, we're essentially talking the entire Hill campus, or are we talking about the classrooms or the area just for Marin Oaks?
We were focusing on the classroom portion for the Marin Oaks High School portion.
So we wouldn't be doing the rest of that facility?
No, the intent was just the classroom portion.
Okay. Nancy, this one might be for you, but do we have any idea what it's going to cost to run all these air conditioners on a regular ongoing basis, or is it going to be a regular ongoing basis? But operating costs are the ultimate thing around here. I mean, we spend every nickel we get is a pass through, mostly to our employees, supplies and keeping the lights on. So I think it's going to be important that we understand how this is going to affect our operating costs.
So we didn't look at it for these sites, but we did look at it extensively for the San Jose project that the board approved. And there is not extensive additional operating costs as you increase them, because you are increasing significantly the efficiency of the devices that are going in. But on the same side, you are losing the potential for, if you put in additional higher efficiency heating devices and you don't put in air conditioning, you're taking away the savings. So while there is not additional operating costs, you are potentially taking away your ability to create operating savings by upgrading your HVAC units to more efficient units. I hope that was...
Yeah, that's fair. So I would just ask you guys to try to add that information into the best of your ability. And at some point, maybe we should be talking about the whole system, combining heat and air would eventually, might cost a little more to put it in, but in the end, it might be less to operate than just adding and operating air conditioning. I just think we have to take that, seriously enough, so I don't want to just ignore it. I would just ask you to bring some of that along if we and should we move forward on this.
When I bring back the additional detailed classroom site data, I can bring some more operational costs for these particular designs we were looking at.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Trustee Nell. Any other questions right now? Let's go to public comment then. My first speaker is Heather Smith, and then Kim Stanley. Hi.
Hi, just to answer a question that was asked a little bit ago. In my last speech, when I spoke to you about air conditioning at Olive, I did state, and you can do the research, that education code does tie into the labor code, which in Governor Brown signed Bill 1167 that requires Cal OSHA to come up with limits by January 1st, 2019. So I'm asking the board to consider adding AC to Olive and reassessing Olive as a priority when it comes to the bond. When I saw the achievement levels shared at the October 17th school board meeting, I immediately noticed that Olive is the lowest out of all the elementary schools for English language arts, with only 33% of its students that met or exceeded standards. The third lowest for math, with only 38% of its students that met or exceeded standards. I repeatedly hear that equity is the top priority for NUSD, so I find myself asking, then why isn't Olive a top priority when it comes to the bond? One way to help Olive is by adding AC to our classrooms. There have been many studies that have proven a correlation between student achievement and classroom climate. Results have repeatedly shown that proper ventilation and temperatures around 72 degrees greatly improve student learning and test scores. I have been to many meetings where test scores are the topic of discussion, along with declining enrollment. The reality is that parents move into homes within Olive boundaries, look at websites like California School Dashboards and Great Schools, which show our test scores, and they choose to put their kids elsewhere. We need to give Olive the equity our teachers and students desperately need to improve test scores, so parents will stop choosing to put their kids into private schools over Olive. When you look at all the schools throughout NUSD and compare the schools with AC to those that do not, you will see that, with the exception of Hamilton, which has AC and is newer, and Rancho, which you saw a little bit ago, that the temperatures are not that high, that schools that have lower percentages of socioeconomically disadvantaged students have AC. The schools that have a higher percentage of socioeconomically disadvantaged students do not have AC. This leaves many to conclude that NUSD cares more for the affluent community and does not care about the low-income community. If you move now to improve Olive, you will see a rise in test scores, which will bring students out of the private schools and back into Olive. This will help increase money from the state to help our budget, which we all know is an issue. It's time to give Olive the updates it desperately needs and give our teachers the support they need for students to meet and exceed standards. I'm asking you to please invest in Olive now. I'm sure you will see a return on your investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Kim Stanley.
Hi, my name is Kim Staley. I have two sons that go to Olive. Not as tall. Kim Staley. I have two sons that go to Olive that are in 4th and in 2nd grade. My husband and I grew up in Novato. We met at SINALOA in band, and we just recently moved back to Novato. We were here when Joel Montero was superintendent under the Jim Barrett School Board, but we came back to Novato because we want our kids to experience this great community. We want to be close to our families, and we want to have great public schools. So imagine my horror when my 7-year-old Weston comes home from school and throws up because he has got heat stroke. So the reason why we're here is it's not just about having cold steaks. It's about our kids' safety. And our kids are hot and they're sick at school. And I think that that is unacceptable. I also think that I'd like to think about how hot it is in this room. Now think about if this room was 30, 9, and 10-year-olds, 20 of whom are boys. And imagine that you're the teacher. And it's not even that hot in here. So I would actually like to offer a challenge again to you, Superintendent, that I think that it only seems fair that the school district offices don't run air conditioning in these offices every single day, that our kids don't have air conditioning in every single school in Novato. Because when you are hot and sweating at your desk, I want you to think about the kids in our school that are hot and sweaty. And when you have to think about what you're going to wear at school that doesn't show the sweat, you can think about our teachers who have to decide that every day. And how am I going to engage and control these children when they are hot? And I think, why isn't air conditioning on Olive's master plan? It's simply because, do you want water or do you want food? That's the choices that we're left with. So it's not that we don't want air conditioning, we desperately need it. And I feel that Olive, which is the oldest school in Novato, it perplexes me. Why doesn't it have air conditioning then? Because I got to be honest, we don't have the PTA funds that we could raise air conditioning. That's just not who our school is. So that's why we come to you, because we really need our help. Our children are sick because of this. And I think it is an equity issue. That why, if I went to my nieces and nephews go to Pleasant Valley, they have air conditioning, and I think of the demographics at Pleasant Valley. I think of the PTA that can raise those money, and we just don't have that at our school. We have teachers who love being there and who are struggling because it is just so hot. And as the graphic showed, it's only going to get worse. So you can put it off now, and you can put it off now, but it's not going to end. It's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter. And I know that it's kind of a joke to say, well, let's not have air conditioning here, but I think it actually would go a long way with parents. I think it would say, wow, you guys are really committed in a no-cost way to show that we're with you, students, we're with you, teachers. It would actually save money on the budget for Novato. So I hope that as you're listening to these things, it's because we're thinking about the health and wealth of our kids, and thank you for considering this.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking. That concludes our public comment on that issue. The question I would have would be if staff could come back with some suggestions of where, if we're not going to pull from site-specific funds, where we could, some ideas where we could get the money from the entire pool to come up with that 6.8 to 8.25 million.
We can do that.
Could we do that? Yes, Trustee Miller and then Trustee Nell.
As you look at the chart that was provided, there's two campuses that exceed the one I wrote on here. This one.
I can't read.
It's classroom average high temperatures fall 2016. And if you look at the two charts that go over the dotted line, Olive and Linwood are the two that spike, and they are the two oldest. Go to your right, keep going, keep going, keep going, right there. That's where it becomes obvious, those two bumps. Those are the two oldest campuses in our district. They're clearly the construction standards that were put in place when those buildings were built didn't consider the thermal issues as much as newer construction. And so I think the comments that have been made about this may be a district issue for us to solve for equity is a fair question that we need to think about. I don't know what I finally think about that, but
yeah, at least
those
get the
two
information.
campuses are physically the oldest, and in terms of student populations, serve those communities that are also the older communities in Novato, so have slightly different populations. I think it's something we need to think about.
Yep.
I don't know what I conclude, but it's.
Let's look at it.
I would like to have some staff put some thought to it. I don't know what the answer is.
Okay. Trustee Nell. And then I'd like Jeffrey, if you wouldn't mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
One simple question. There are gaps in the data, and I'll just assume you just didn't have information.
Actually, most of the gaps are in the spring, and that's when the heating was on in the classroom. So it didn't register a temperature, it just heater on.
Didn't go on.
Right. It left it as a blank, so it didn't mess up the average calculation.
So just another little thing would be to make sure that we're aware of pending Cal OSHA labor regulations. I just would. It's something to follow up. We're using OSHA here. Usually OSHA mirrors OSHA in a lot of ways, but there are extra add-ons that California does that the rest of the country does not. That's perfectly fine. Just want to know what they are. And then finally, just to follow on my original, what I wanted to speak about was this equity issue. I mean, this is, data speaks. It's speaking to us here. I think that's, we're focused on the facilities aspect. We're supposed to be making sure kids are learning. I think that's an important thing, and I would like to support Trustee Milrick's. It may not come necessarily from your department, but if we could get some information about how temperature affects education, I think that would be a reason alone to address a couple of these schools anyway.
I know there are studies that were done. What's the optimal temperature for a learning environment? I can bring back some of that information at a future report.
Thanks, Trustee Nell. Jeff?
All right, so I guess I've had the luxury of having all the schools that have AC for the 12 years I've been in the Novato County School District. But I remember this one particular day in one class I had at San Marino where the air conditioner was just not working, and more than half the class was full of boys, and that was probably the worst class I've had for my entirety of my school year. It smelled. It was there was a thick layer of musk. It was disgusting. But yeah, it's just, I can just imagine the situation, but continuously happening every single day for the whole summer season. And I was on the bond implementation meeting board, and I thought that something this was gonna pass, and I really don't remember what happened or the specifics, but we talked about it as a group of all the students. We were yeah, this is something that was relatively important and something that we thought was that did pass. So I'm just curious to see how that happened, because I don't remember. And it really does come back to the equity thing, where how can we say that we are giving every student the ability to succeed when you're kind of giving some of these students 3-stay high thing, but how you appear to your friends and all that is going to influence your day more than what classes you're taking. So I guess what I'm getting at is this comes down to an equity thing where every student should have the air conditioning so that they can function and do the best to their ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mack?
Yeah, I just catch everybody up on what I'm seeing in the master plan. 7 elementary schools, total cost roughly. Just put it out there so everyone can kind of get some order of magnitude in their head. And really, 4 of them are coming in at 7-point-something million total in their projects. One of them, San Ramon's, way down at 4, largely newer, I suppose. And then, of course, we have 2 schools that are double-digit millions. There's Olive at 10 and Linwood at 12. So it's clear we definitely are putting more project dollars into those 2 already, largely because of their age. That said, I agree. It looks to me like 10 is not enough for Olive. It's our oldest campus. And not only does it need updating because it's old, but it's also configured wrong. It does not have a true multi-purpose room. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So once again, in the spirit of equity, I totally agree. And these complaints aren't just coming out of thin air. This is a real issue. There's a reason why people contact us. And this, for me, is something we have to act on. We have to do something about it. So that's my take.
Thanks, Trustee Mack. Trustee Aguilar?
Yeah, so just wondering if we can take a look and see what lessons we can learn from this. I believe that everybody had an opportunity and a chance to be involved in the master's plan. Obviously, not everybody had an opportunity. Obviously, not everybody did have a say. And so my question is why? So here we are in a special board meeting, and we're talking, about making changes, which is fine. I don't have a problem with it, and I do agree with what has been said as far as making sure that our students are comfortable in order for them to learn. But if we can just look to see what are some of the lessons that we can learn from this, and so that and for future surveys and future data gathering, to make sure that everybody can have an opportunity to be involved, because here we are having to create a new language and be careful with making sure that we don't break any rules and regulations and laws and things like that. And so if we can just make a note of that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Could I make a suggestion? Maybe we go back to each site principal and kind of revisit this and ask where they are right now. I mean, obviously the answer at all is going to be different than we got before, and just touch base with all the principals.
Yes. Add that to the.
Specifically with respect to AC, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Any more comments, questions from the board? We're good. Trustee now.
Since we're going back to all the sites, I guess one of the
There
things we're going to tell them is that the original estimates that we gave them were low. And so I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
I wasn't saying necessarily they'd have to identify a source. I'm just whether or not they feel it's important. And then we'd obviously
Agreed.
have to have that conversation where the funding is coming from. Thank you. All right. That concludes, I think we're to the end of the temperature and air conditioning analysis, and thank you very much. Good information. Look forward to seeing you back. All right, we're on to our first discussion and only discussion action item, the schematic design for Novato High School, the second turf field. And looks like we have a lot of interested people here tonight. So it's,
Patiently waiting.
and once again, Yancy and Mike. Mike, you're going to start off?
Sure, I'm back.
Okay.
Real quick, I just want to go through the schematic design presentation. Have a good team here. I have Bill Fee from Carducci and Associates, landscape architect, and I have Todd Lee, obviously you all know, from Greystone West, to talk about this as well. What I'd like to do is quickly cover a CEQA exemption request that we put before the board, and then like to hand it over to Bill to go over the schematic drawing and the design itself and explain everything and answer those questions for you. Turn it over to Todd to go over our detailed cost estimate, how we arrived at that, and the project schedule, how we're going to get that project done. So with that, I'll move into the CEQA exemption. As you have in your board packets, we conducted that categorical exclusion analysis that's under CEQA, and we reviewed the exceptions to CEQA, and we did not find any that applied to this project, and I'm not going to read the language, but per the CEQA policy, if you don't find anything that you need to evaluate to see if it has environmental impact, you can exempt it from, it's not subject to the CEQA process. You read the detailed reasons. We fully support those and recommend the board approve us to file a CEQA notice of exemption for this particular project, should it get approved. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bill, who will go over the schematic design.
Thank you and good evening.
Hello.
So what we have here is a conceptual plan for the field renovation. Is there a pointer I can use?
It doesn't work on the TV.
Okay, all right. So, all right.
I can point.
You can? All right. So I'll try and describe in words. There's a red dashed line around the whole project for the project boundary. That's an existing practice field that's natural grass. The proposal is to put a synthetic turf field, that's the rectangle on the left-hand side, that's surrounded by a white dash boundary. It'll be a multi-purpose field for soccer, a 60-yard wide by 110-yard long soccer field, as well as boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse. If you can see close up, the girls lacrosse is kind of in a teal color, and the boys lacrosse is in an orange color. So that would be markings on the synthetic turf. The perimeter boundary includes the out of bounds areas. The team benches would be on the bottom of the plan, which is the south side. And we've created a space on the top at midfield for 2 portable 5-row bleachers. and there's an accessible path of travel from that point to the north towards the baseball field, and then turn right and go downhill to the gym, the boys and girls locker room. So there'd be an accessible path of travel to the boys and girls locker room, and accessible path of travel to the parking, that adjacent parking lot, and the restrooms in the building across from the boys and girls locker rooms. We would include water and empty electrical conduits on both sides of the field, so you'd have them at the team benches and the spectator areas. The whole field, the synthetic turf field, would be bordered by a 6-foot-high chain link fence with a concrete border at the base of it to separate the natural grass from the synthetic grass and also secure it from vandalism. As was mentioned at San Marin earlier, that we did find that there's a bit of a grading challenge. We all think the field's flat, but when we had a surveyor measure it, there's a 5-foot grade change from where the player benches are to where the spectator seats are. So that'll require some grading challenge. Is there anything else I missed? Right. So yeah, the black lines on the bottom and the left and the top, those are the utilities around the field. We generally try to minimize the utilities under the synthetic turf, so we have minimum trenches in the field, so that we don't have settlement issues. It would be a field turf product that would not use crumb rubber. It would use sand and cork. And it would have a shock pad and a drainage pad underneath the synthetic turf that would give you the safety values for the purposes of GMAX. The field comes with an 8-year warranty. The GMAX warranty on the pad would be for 25 years. So the pad could be reused for theoretically 2 or 3 lifespans of the synthetic turf carpet. The cork is the same cork from the tree that we use to put in wine bottles. It's an all-natural product. It has no chemicals, or there's no risk to the environment, has less heat than crumb rubber infill. So we wanted to propose a product that didn't have any worries of crumb rubber. So it does not use any crumb rubber, and it also mitigates heat much better than the crumb rubber. We do not have does not require an irrigation system. We don't have automatic irrigation in the field. What we do, we will have a perimeter quick coupler system that can be used by maintenance personnel for the purpose of hosing down the field when needed for special cleaning, so forth. And the field comes with an 8-year warranty.
Great. Could you, while you're talking about that, could you talk a little bit about the baseball practice field? Or
for the purpose,
right there.
The one next to it?
Right, Mike just pointed it out.
Okay, excuse me. Yeah, I didn't mention that. In the upper left-hand corner of the synthetic turf field, we've pretty much where the soccer kick area is, we will include a white home plate in the synthetic turf, and then we'll mark it for 2 base paths, a 60-foot base path and a 90-foot base path, by just marking in the field where those bases would go. Wouldn't actually put the bases. We could put pegs if we wanted a post, but there'd be permanent markings of the white squares. And then there's a portable backstop, which is called Big Bubba. It's the one that most high schools and colleges use, and it's generally used for batting practice, and it's suitable for batting practice, but not a game. The school currently has one. They use one on their baseball field for practice, so it would be the same type of backstop. The reason for having that would be because it rains in January and February, and when the baseball season, once it gets started, maybe the field could be shared by baseball, soccer, lacrosse, so it could be a multi-use field. It would be for practices.
Got it. Thank you.
Hitting practice.
Great. Trustees? Trustee Mack, do you want to?
Just a couple quick questions. Of course, I got a lot of stuff to say, but I'll just ask some specific questions. And Yancy and Mike, forgive me, I'm just going to ask the same questions we asked last night, just so everybody else can hear. So what's to happen with the area not turfed, the grass irrigated area that is no longer turfed?
So the area to the right, which we put a label B on, And that would be a decision of the district. Where it could say go fallow. The thought is it's no longer used for athletics because you have the synthetic turf field that's much more suitable. As currently used, the field is primarily used as a soccer field. So you'd still be having the same use on the synthetic. The natural grass area could just then be extra land. You'd stop watering it, stop mowing it, so it would reduce your operating costs.
So we'd tear out the irrigation system and potentially.
We'd abandon it in
Yeah.
place.
And
We wouldn't spend money to take it out.
Okay. And then another just specific question at this point. What is the dimension of the line, the effective right field for that, going from the home plate to the fence perimeter?
So
about 200 feet?
The white lines are 110 yards apart.
No, I'm talking about
sorry.
if you were standing at the home plate location.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you went down the right field.
The white
fence.
lines are 60 yards.
So that's 180.
180 plus another 30.
Okay.
For
About 210?
out of bounds. Yeah, 210 to the fence to right field.
In your experience, is that deep enough for a baseball field?
Not a game. No, it does not meet regulation. Regulation's 315.
That's all. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. You'd have a deeper center field.
Yeah, and left.
And left.
Trustee Aguilar.
Yeah. So earlier tonight, I asked about if you can compare and contrast the difference between the natural grass and the artificial. I was worried about the safety, and I'm glad that you talked about it, a little bit about, making sure that our students wouldn't get hurt. But my understanding is, and then correct me if I'm wrong, with the artificial, sometimes when the student is playing and they slide, and did I hear you say that they wouldn't get? Sometimes they get the skin burn and
abrasions.
And so you just said tonight that wouldn't be the case. Is that right?
There'd be a pad under the field
Uh-huh.
that would protect from concussions. So if someone fell, it would protect head injuries.
So with artificial, and when they're sliding, is there any burning that?
The artificial turf is more abrasive than a natural grass.
Uh-huh.
So there's still a risk of skin rashes
Uh-huh.
from it. But that's a minor concern considered to overall how much more safe synthetic turf is because of the overall quality. You don't have gopher holes. You have a smooth surface like the carpet in front of us, between us. It's like dead level. Natural grass can kind of be lumpy, and also during the reason for the purpose for this project is during the winter months, the soccer players are playing from November, December, January, February. Those are the months of intense rainfall, and the rain would essentially close the natural grass field, and so the natural grass field would not be usable. So that's in conflict with the soccer season. So really, that was why this project got. I failed to mention that, but that was the whole purpose for this project coming into the master plan. So in terms of safety, you could say overall they're about equally safe. There have been tests done. There's still some risk in playing soccer. Having the pad makes it safer. Natural grass, in effect, we're trying to emulate a well-maintained natural grass field.
Thank you for educating me. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Trustee Scott.
So question on the electrical receptacles. I see that there's just one P over here at the bottom and then another one over here. I'm just curious, as we're doing this, are we ever anticipating like portable lights for a night game in terms of, or maybe not night game, but night practice in terms of soccer? Didn't soccer move to the winter? Okay, is there electrical for that? Just if there was like, how we do that game at Novato High with the Powder Puff game that I know my daughters loved playing that. And we rented the lights and they plugged it in. Will that allow for that? Should they want to do that at some point?
These are convenience receptacles like charging your laptop or your phone or running some type of device. They're really only about 20 amps per per
thinking for
receptacle.
for
If you
future
wanted
use
to,
if they
if you
wanted
wanted
to
to
do that.
light the field, the thing to do would be rent generators like they use for construction sites, and sort of line 5 of them on each side of the field. They are noisy and produce diesel fume, but that would be the way to do it. You don't want to place something like that on synthetic turf, though, so it's a
you
little
don't?
problematic. Because if it leaks the oil, the diesel fuel would degrade the polyethylene in the synthetic turf. Then we don't. That's why we don't want to drive cars on synthetic turf, because the motor oil that leaks would degrade the polyethylene. But so.
I'm just thinking in terms
If-
of the future, in
it-
terms of future use, if we needed to put electrical in there to enhance that, just options. I'm just looking for options. I want to think smart about this. If, what the future use may or may not be, and if that infrastructure isn't there,
Right.
have we thought about it? That's all. I'm
Great question,
just
Trustee Scott.
curious.
Yes, we have, and we're putting in empty conduit for future scoreboard, future uses of those things. So not pulling any wires in them, but leaving the capacity for the future.
So I have a question, speaking of the scoreboard. Why are we, yes, step right back. Why are we doing this without including the cost of the scoreboard, or what's the logic there, or why even mention it? I mean,
It's primarily a practice field. We did want to build it to CAF standards for formal game use, for future use.
future use, okay.
But you could do a game on it. We just we didn't put all the amenities in for the scoreboard and all the things that would increase the
Okay,
cost.
so that's just a future, like running a spare
We did
chase.
build the capacity to
Okay.
do it. We just didn't want to start stretching the cost.
Okay.
Trying to look at the most cost-effective design, yet usable to meet both practice and game
Okay,
scenarios.
and it's a few dollars more, I guess. Okay.
Depending on
Trustee
how
Miller,
elaborate.
and then Trustee Mack. And then
As,
Trustee.
as we've sort of bookmarked the entire evening, your very first page, construction costs are going to climb faster than anybody anticipated. The result of the fires in Santa Rosa and 8,000 insurance jobs kicking off to rebuild is going to pretty well soak up the available labor pool. So we need to be conscious of cost in everything we do. So as I look at what you've laid out, my first reaction is, gee, that's an awful lot of grass to give up, and I wonder about how not to forfeit the fields that are there, and I would be interested in sitting with a bunch of cutout pieces of paper and sliding them around. But for purposes of this evening, you've identified this as a practice field, and with that you have not provided a scoreboard. I'm not criticizing, but I'm just saying what we have is there's no scoreboard. There may be a conduit, but there's no scoreboard. There's no provision for a large power supply other than enough for your laptop or utility outlets, at least at both sides. So maybe, and the bleachers, the seating for spectators is a total of 40 seats.
It would be 100, I think 50 people per bleacher.
Okay, so 100. Okay, so you could, so
Or maybe 25, 5 people per row.
oh, okay. So you think 50 or 100, something like that. So basically, the dimensions that you've got in here in 2 colors were lacrosse and soccer. If you overlaid football on this, does it get bigger or littler? Can you have football alignment in this?
Football would fit inside soccer.
Oh,
If
okay,
it's a
that's what I-
practice,
yeah,
but
okay, yeah.
you'd have an issue with the football goalpost. You'd have to sleeve it, or unless it's just practice.
Right. So you could play football. You just can't. You don't have a goalpost to do that part of the game.
You could practice football for sure.
You could practice football on this. So the overall plan for the campus would then be competition games, football, lacrosse, and soccer are all played in the stadium setting, because the stadium setting supports all 3. Is it big enough for all 3?
Yes.
Okay, so all 3, lacrosse, soccer, and football, can play competition games with visitors and PA systems and
whatever else you have.
And restrooms.
In the one stadium that's available to the campus. And then every one of those sports can use this as a secondary, as a practice field at times when they're not playing competition.
Yes.
So there isn't, except for the place kicker, everybody else can practice right here, because you could, if you mark it for football.
Yes, and you could use it for physical education.
Oh, and oh, by the way, for the benefit of most of the kids on the campus, you can do physical education. So it really is a practice facility, which is what I'm trying to get to. This really is a practice facility as a second to our competition facility that's already on the campus. And that's the model we're following here, and I'd be interested in having that conversation around San Marin to see if we're doing anything similar there, if we have a practice field as a second site versus a competition site in the primary venue. Same model?
Yes.
Okay. So they're comparable and they're equal, and it turns out grading's an issue on both of them. What I heard tonight, you got carryalls running around moving lots of material. Okay, I think that answers my question. I just want to understand how you were proposing it as a campus-wide facility. It's a practice facility. It's not a competition facility. Thank you.
Its main intention was as a separate usable practice facility during winter, but it also will be a regulation-sized soccer field and lacrosse for both men and women's. It could be used as an official game for freshmen or JV if there's conflicts with the stadium field, sort of an overflow field.
But it doesn't have spectator facilities much. It doesn't have lights at all.
Correct.
It doesn't have a PA system at all. All of those things that go into a play field aren't there. This is really a practice field that could support a competitive game, but is not intended as its primary purpose as a competitive
And thinking
field.
forward, we did put in the conduit too. If we eventually decided to expand to include those items, we had the ability to do that without incurring a lot more money by digging up and putting new conduit, so.
Yeah, okay. I
Just wanted
just
to
want
clarify.
to get a vision for how we're treating both high schools.
Thank you. Trustee Mack.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to talk with the varsity girls soccer coach at Novato High, and got because I really wanted. So this is more reporting out to you guys, so you know, and just wanted to get background on what their needs are. And while certainly practice is part of it, because in winter, sun goes down early, you just only have so much time, so you need multiple locations. Unlike San Marin, where you can do sequential scheduling, here you have to do simultaneous scheduling. So at San Marin, you can go into the night because you have lights, so you don't really necessarily need a second field. However, also in talking to, I forget her name, Trisha Johnson, the varsity coach at Novato, she was pretty clear saying that soccer, MCAL soccer is preparing to go to freshman level, which would necessitate multiple games on weeknights on sites. Now, once again, at San Marin, that's not a problem. We got lights. At Novato, that is a problem because there's only one game soccer field. So what the implication is that whatever we do, we have to have a second regulation soccer field. While across town, not necessarily, it can be more of a practice location because they can play games on the main field into the night. Just want to put that out there for folks so they understand it.
But we're not talking PA systems here.
Correct, it's just freshmen. Just freshmen, JV.
I mean, if we're going to start talking sound systems back here, we got to talk to the neighbors.
No. This would just be a game with officials, and they're just playing the game. So no sound system. There would be two, small bleachers kind of
I
things.
just want to make sure you talk her off there. There's a great field for play.
All right.
No, the point would be it'd be an officiated game, so it'd have to be an official size. That's the main point.
All right, thanks, Trustee Mack. I appreciate that insight. Trustee Nell, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions about the exterior, and just want to get, you're recommending a 6-foot fence. That's as tall as I am, basically. So I guess it's just a deterrent, I guess, more than an actual security thing.
It'll keep a vehicle out.
The access to the field, you have this area carved out in the upper left-hand corner of the graphic, and there seems to be some black dotted lines along the red and white perimeter, and is that, so where can you get in and out of this thing? Is that the only area that, or are we gonna have some emergency gates or maintenance gates or?
I was thinking of that today. Probably need to have some exit gates, as if you're in a room. So we'd have opposite corners according to the exit diagram by code.
So that if we were gonna have, you know, the ability to get in and off the field and other places besides that upper left-hand line.
And when the ball goes over the fence, somebody can retrieve it. Right.
So
yes,
and I was trying to get an idea of that too, because I see balls going up over the fence and rolling away. So there's but even more so, just around the perimeter itself. If we have these gates, are we gonna need access paths to where these additional, or these, you know, emergency maintenance, visitor site access?
They don't have to be accessible by code. So what we're addressing is a code issue for ADA access or accessible access from the facility back to the locker room. And the synthetic turf itself is totally accessible.
Right, so I'm talking about outside the lines. I just want to, you know, that's probably gonna, that costs more. We're meeting all the minimums, but I'm just trying to get a feel for like what's going to go around the exterior 6-foot fence. That's just where the grass is going to grow into the fence, and we're going to assume there aren't going to be people trying to walk around there. You mentioned go fallow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I want that to happen.
Be a concrete band that would keep the weeds from moving.
There's a concrete band. Continuous?
Continuously under the fence, yes.
Okay. All right, we're getting there. Just a couple of questions, but thanks.
Okay, Greg? No, I'm good. Okay. I have a question about, and then we'll go to public comment. I'm sure you were coming right up. And what about the possibility for renting this out to generate some revenue? Is that a possibility, or are we going to be maxing it out already, or?
Not sure the specifics on the demand for the field by the school site, but yes, it would be, if there was any openings, it would be open for public, especially on weekends.
Good. I mean,
Sundays we don't have practices.
In light of the current situation.
And summers.
In light of our current situation in the budget, I think that would be something good to look at.
If I could make a suggestion before we do blue cards, can we finish with cost and schedule, or did you want to?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Any more questions for the architect? Okay, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. And next, we're going to go into the cost and schedule. I'll turn over to Todd Lee.
Thank you. I'll move quickly. More than any other project, turf fields are driven by square footage. It's a lot like buying carpet for your house. The bigger the field, the more it's going to cost. In the case of Novato, as mentioned, it is complicated by the fact there's almost a 5-foot vertical difference between the short dimension of the field, which translates to moving almost 6,000 cubic yards of dirt to level the field out. We've got a 120,000 foot footprint. We've got about 85,000 feet of turf, and we're projecting the cost to be just shy of $2.7 million on the project. And again, it is about as simple as it comes. We realize that we're significantly in excess of the budget, and we've tried to look at maximizing the use of the topography to minimize the amount of dirt we have to move, and to keep it very flexible, but also to try and minimize the dimensions and keep the cost down. As far as the schedule, if this moves forward tonight, we've kind of got our schematic. We'll be in design development through the first of the year. Soils report's already taken place, the sampling, and around December 1st, we're supposed to have the soils report. This one does not have to go to California Geologic Survey, so it'll move quickly. We're looking to go to DSA for an over-the-counter approval because it's access only between February 14th and March 27th. And again, get out to bid early to try and avoid the summer rush with an April bid period. These projects take roughly 5 months in construction. We're showing from June 18th to November 2nd.
Okay.
Happy to answer any more questions. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Trustee, no? Or Mac?
Quick question.
You want to go now? I'd like
Just,
to
just
go
one
to-
quick question. No, just before the Blues, just one quick question. Just a quick, on the budget of 2.7, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating another question from last night. I was talking with these guys late last night. Anyway, just so everybody can know it, the portion of this budget that's attributed to moving dirt and remediating the underground water. Last night we were saying it's about 250,000. If that's about right, we'll just go with it.
That looks to be pretty close, yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, and let's go to, Trustee Miller, and then Trustee Aguilar.
The last time we put turf fields down, and which is basically an asphalt, crushed rock asphalt paving job with material put on top of it, we did a pre-qualification and we excluded a local contractor in that process. And I've heard grief from that because it turns out the local contractor was used as a sub on the job and did the work anyway. So I would like to understand how we're going to bid these. Maybe not tonight, but we need to make sure that we don't that we think of that carefully because there was repercussions last time. Sure. And maybe we need to do it or not, but I'd like staff to consider it and make a recommendation.
Once approved, if approved tonight, we'll bring it back during the request to go out to bid, bring the information. Thank you.
Trustee Aguilar.
I knew that years ago we approved defibrillators for to be put close by to our athletic areas, and I'm wondering if I can't remember. Do we have one close by to?
There's
to
one
this place?
I'm sorry. No, there's one in Novato. The Gordon Gym has one.
In the gym,
as well as the swimming pool.
And then, do we want to put one closer to the field, or
Good.
if we can bring?
Need to be secured.
Look into the requirements for sure, but definitely
Yeah,
something we can
Thank
look
you.
into.
Okay, thank you. Now let's go to public comment. And I'm just going to go through in order what I have here. Mark Schmidt, and just a reminder, if you could come up to the podium when you speak, you'll have 3 minutes. And Gladys was kind enough to reset the timer. And Mark, welcome.
Thank you. All right, so I'm a parent at San Marin High School. My son is a junior. He's a varsity baseball player, and he's a very driven student. So academics and sports are both very, very important to him. My plan was I invited him to come and speak to this group about his opinion regarding the fields at the high schools, but he couldn't come, so I texted him. So I have a text conversation here I want to share with you.
He's learning.
Exactly. So gotta do what we can do. So I asked him, well, if you could text the trustees, what would you say? And he said, he's talking about San Marin, but just in general, he says, our field is by far the worst in MCAL. Ask any team, it's unanimous that everyone hates San Marin, and he commented about the field, and I'll move on from that. Then he says the drainage is so bad where we couldn't practice or play on our baseball field or have any home games for about the first third or up to about a half of the season this last year. I mean, it was a rough year, we all know that, but so I kind of shot back at him and said, well, so what? You reschedule a few games. What's the big deal? Well, he said, well, he came back to me. He said, listen, the moving a bunch of the games and loading them up at the end of the season isn't very helpful for an academic student, for any student, because, and him, this is a junior year. This is when it's really, really tough academically. And he's saying, look, I'm a little nervous this next year. I got to get my grades up. I've got to keep my grades. And if we have a bunch of games at the end of the season, then that's coincidentally the exact same time when the teachers are packing on the projects, the end of the semester. So he's concerned about, his situation and about having extra games at the end of the season and extra homework. It's all a lot of work. So, and I share that with everyone here because you have the same situation. I mean, he's from San Marin, but same situation at Novato. And there's water issues. I mean, you guys talked about water here. There's drainage issues, and it's important for students to have both be able to schedule games and have the time for academics. Now, and so basically what I was thinking of when this project comes about is moving the turf field. I would love to see a project where the turf field overlap the baseball. You could almost like take the on this little chart up here, slide the turf field over, overlap the baseball field, have a few extra square footage of, maybe a few extra square footage of turf to cover the baseball field, and so you get multi-sports, multi-use across a bunch. So there we have it. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Good. Well done. And then Matt Elkins, to be followed by Tony Franceschini. Matt?
Thank you.
Hello again.
Hello again. I'm back.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for your attention to this matter. I know it's ongoing and it's not easy to make these decisions. I'd like to thank our friends at San Marin, who are typically adversaries on the field of play, but tonight are partners in a new start for Novato Public School baseball. I also want to thank all the baseball players who showed up tonight to represent, and all the parents as well. Thanks so much. You know, I think we've made a compelling request over the last couple of months. I won't say argument, because it's a civil discussion among people who want the best for our greater school community. I understand that a change in direction toward rebuilding our baseball fields may impact other projects, but compromise is necessary for the greater good. That may mean that a middle school gets a new track, but not turf. So many of those kids will greatly benefit from upgraded facilities at the next level of high school sports. People don't typically pull their kids from middle schools for greener pastures the way they do in high school. What's at stake here is the very survival of a sports program, the ability to keep student athletes from going elsewhere, the image of Novato schools and their caretakers among the greater local and surrounding communities, and the legacy of asking so many to foot the bill for a funding source that somehow is not designed to address programs that have needs but no organized representation when it counts the most. But that has changed, and there is energy in the air. And there are ideas translated into donated architectural plans, PowerPoint presentations, assignments, fundraising, outreach strategies, recruitment, collaboration, all to build additional support facilities next to the NHS baseball field along the perimeter. So it's just not about the turf. That initiative, once a standalone project on its own, has now become an integral, enhancing, and protective shield around the one thing you need to do: extend the multi-use field project to include the adjacent baseball field, which will satisfy most needs, take advantage of economies of scale, and provide a revenue-generating machine that serves a tournament baseball community desperate for additional space. No more need to build a baseball complex in an environmentally sensitive wetlands area. And honestly, the plans we are developing to ask community businesses to contribute funds toward perimeter facility enhancement will face a much stronger headwind if the field itself remains in a sorry state. Businesses are more likely to support your actions if they see you investing in a common effort. In other words, everything starts with the field and then grows outward. Like soil and plants and flowers, it starts low and it grows. Please do the right thing with Measure G funds. Vote no on the multi-use field proposal as written. Hit the edit button, take down the fences, and just keep laying the new turf until you reach the bullpen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Tony, and then Melody Key, please.
Hello, board. I've been here before. I just can't put my finger on when it was, but you guys all look very familiar. This field that you guys have, that your design's awesome. I mean, what you guys are doing up at San Marin when it happens, it's beautiful. God, I wish we could have that and then work on the baseball fields, all as a separate project, but we can't. And I'm not trying to be mean or rude here, but you have two of the worst baseball fields, not only in Marin County, but in the Bay Area. I do public works construction. Both our facilities are poor. And as Mark Schmidt indicated, our first, basically, I think it was our first 8 home games we had to play away at San Marin. I know Novato went through similar issues. Mr. Lee is completely, Todd Lee is completely correct. You know, you're 2.8, you're already above the your budget, but if you include a baseball field in there, probably it'll be a little bit more, but you've added a practice soccer field plus baseball. I think it's an absolute win-win. Craig Pitty came up to us about 6 months ago. I was out on the football field, and he said, this is what's being considered. And that never even came into my mind. I thought it was absolute genius to incorporate this practice fields with the baseball fields. It's a no-brainer. In the long run, will save you money because you're going to have to do something with these baseball fields at some point. You're going to have to. Now, I know the money's short here. I know it's going to be hard to find. You know, how to make it up. San Marin, I think, is a little bit down the road on Novato. I know at San Marin, we've always wanted to look into however we need to partner up. And with Novato, I'd be glad to sit down with them if we need to partner up with the school district in some way to help out. But you're going to have to deal with these baseball fields. Otherwise, this plan looks phenomenal. I'm all for it. All right, thank you very much.
Melody, and then Pete Knight.
Good evening. I'm Melody Key. I am the parent of a sophomore at Novato High, a baseball player, as well as a 7th grader at San Jose and a 5th grader at Rancho. And I have to agree with the previous comments. The fields at Novato High and at San Marin are absolutely the worst in the county, at the very least. For years, I mean, my husband played on the same field at Novato High as my son has. And he had the opportunity to play some travel baseball as an adult, and has been at different facilities across the country. He's played as far as Florida. And our facilities are, quite frankly, embarrassing. You go to Redwood, you go to Marin Catholic, they have turf fields. In some cases, you know, even their freshman team is bust. So there is a drastic divide between the facilities. And as a result, you can see also a drastic divide in the number of players that come out, the number of players that we lose to Marin Catholic, to other that go out of district, that go to private facilities, they go to Branson, they go wherever. And Novato High has the opportunity between MSA and now MBI to draw players in. And I think that we're missing the ball there on drawing student athletes that might like to participate in some of those programs, but because of the quality of our athletic facilities, choose to go somewhere else. My son, for example, the two most important things to him in coming were ROTC and baseball. And the only reason that Novato High went out for him was that it's the only ROTC program. If Novato High were to lose ROTC based on baseball facilities, he would elect to go to another school. And he had said, even as a senior, if Novato High were to lose the ROTC program based on the current baseball situation, he would leave the school. So just I would like you to recognize that is a factor in student choices. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Pete Knight, and then Kevin Bartran. Pete left? Okay, thank you. Okay, Kevin?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I was here last week, and thanks for having us again. If you recall, my son, I'm Kevin Bartram. My son Derek is going to Novato High next year. He's at San Jose now. My daughter Dharma's there now. I'm helping Coach Don and Matt and some other parents and the boosters look at ways to enhance the baseball field. And I've been working on a number of ideas and ways to help with some of the facilities. But as we've been talking about opportunities, possible opportunities with turf, to where we could actually fix the field and get it into the proper working condition, I've now come up with some additional ideas that I want to be able to share, and some ways that I think that this could be developed to help the district in many ways other than the obvious. First off, the space where the baseball field currently is can accommodate the full all-weather field, sideline warm-up and practice space, covered areas for off-season and rain day workouts, storage for extra backstops and any other equipment we need like that. The outfield can also, as mentioned here today, accommodate a practice field, as has been shared here with the soccer and lacrosse field. So my position and what I'm going to share here today is based partly on work. I work in sports marketing. I've been involved in the development of major venues, including Pac Bell Park, and currently working with folks on the Warriors Arena and the A's Stadium. I have clients that I take into these venues. And we look at ways to, for companies to get involved in a meaningful way in a venue. Creating or recreating a new venue, which is essentially what we're talking about doing here, is much more valuable, much more popular with sponsors than, just painting and building a couple of practice facilities. That would be helpful. That we're going to do that if we need to, but really rebuilding the facility in a way is what would be of interest to sponsors. There are a number of ways to generate revenue from this. Travel tournament rental. I've talked to people with the California Lightning, which is based in San Rafael, All World Sports. There's no doubt we would be renting our field, as would San Marin. And in fact, if Novato and San Marin both renovated their fields in this way, tournament producers would be very likely to come and use the two facilities at the same time. Line Drive folks told me the other day they would rent it right now next summer. They'd be booking weeks for camps, which is another area of business or a potential area for revenue. By the way, Casa Grande, Petaluma are doing this already. I'm going to run out of time. I can't believe it. I added too much here. I'll summarize by saying we would like to work with the district to come up with a good workable plan for improving the baseball facility. We think we can do it in a way that would give the other sports what they're looking for in a practice facility as well, and practice fields. There's a lot to be done with this that would generate revenue and support the community, and we hope to be able to work with you. We ask you to vote no on the current proposal. Let us work with you on a new solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Jack McMahon up and then John Griffin.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm a sophomore at Novato High School, and I'm part of the baseball program. I here have an email from our coach, Don McCory, and I will read it to you. If you consider taking this project into where the baseball field is located, this could be a very nice multi-use area that would accommodate all of the sports, plus would eliminate all of our heavy field maintenance, water, mowing, rodent control, etc. You all have probably heard this before, but the baseball program by far has to put in more labor and expense than any of the other sports. In our very near future, the NUSD will have to address the aged baseball facility. The fencing beyond both dugouts and all around the outfield perimeter must be replaced. The entire drainage system has failed. The irrigation system needs replacing. The baseball community and NUSD continue to place band-aids on our facility without addressing the primary issue. Look at what has occurred just a few years ago. Volunteers replaced the infield turf for an expense exceeding $10,000. If you take a look at the infield, it is not anywhere near level, causing poor play and water puddling. The irrigation is insufficient, which caused this new turf to be riddled with holes and dead spots. A Band-Aid was placed down, and we are back to where we were with less money in our budgets. I inquired why the area wasn't leveled, proper drainage placed and irrigation replaced? The answer was time and money. So NUSD is investing almost $2 million to put in a second soccer and lacrosse facility. My understanding is that they will be redoing the football field soon. This is a great opportunity to use the funds more wisely to fix a problem while accomplishing the same result for aforementioned sports. In the long run, this would be a much cheaper proposal. Just my 2 cents. Thank you for taking the time to hear my brief thoughts. Don.
Thanks, Jack. John, and then Nita, sorry.
Hello, John Griffin. I am a Novato High parent. I have a 10th grader and an 8th grader in the Novato public school system. I was a Little League coach for 7 years here in Novato. I've been a Babe Ruth coach for 3 years. My son has played on the fields of Novato for 10 years now. And I can tell you that each one of those fields has had problems. And so now that he's in high school, isn't this the opportunity to have a baseball field at his climax in his athletic career, in his pinnacle before college, where he can play and have a game and a pleasant experience for him and his teammates? A lot of his teammates are sitting here, and I can tell you, I've coached with those kids. They're great kids. They deserve a good field. And a practice field is not the answer. First of all, Novato has 3 baseball teams, a freshman team, a JV team, and a varsity team, but 1 field. The freshman team this past year had to go to San Jose Middle School to play, which is an inconvenience to every parent. We had to do separate carpools, get them there. What about kids whose parents cannot get them there because of their job or some other reason? It's very restrictive, and therefore not everyone can participate. And I think creating barriers for kids to play baseball is the wrong thing to do. We have to be inclusive. We have to find a way to get these kids to experience everything they can in high school and make sure that their experience is the best it can be. I like the turf idea. The current field is substandard. So we have 1 substandard field and nothing else to use. The San Jose field, where the freshman team played, is also inferior. All maintenance done on the Novato High field and the San Jose field, and the SINALOA field for that matter, is done by Babe Ruth, Little League, and high school parents first and foremost. And there's something wrong with that. The basketball coach does not wax the gym floors, as someone else said. Why are the baseball parents doing all the work? So if we created a turf field that could be used for baseball games, that would make sense, but for practice only, that's putting lipstick on a pig. That is not solving the solution. We need to look at maybe a slightly larger field that has a movable fence, because a 6-foot fence around it so 1 car doesn't get on to leak oil doesn't seem like a very practical thing to do. Can't we find a fence that moves, that can be removed, that can be put back, that can still keep people out? There has to be solutions that are cost effective, that can help us get these boys the games they deserve. The roar of the crowd. This is not highlight. This is baseball. This is America's sport, and it deserves your utmost consideration for the best field possible. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Nita, and then CC Samuntaki.
I think she left.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nita. Good to see you guys again. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm reading a letter that's sent over by Tom Gremmels, who's a Novato high school parent and also a coach in Marin. So this is what he said. My oldest is a 4-year player, 2-year varsity for Novato High School baseball. He is currently at TCU on a full ride Army ROTC 4-year scholarship. He credits his early life success on learning to deal with failure, something baseball forces people to do. Novato High School baseball has graduated very successful student athletes that attend the finest institutions in the land. A high percentage of the Novato High School baseball players are also MSA students. The game of baseball attracts a determined, structured, team-oriented person. An upgrade to facilities may attract more area-wide students to Novato High School and MSA. I played in the early 1980s on basically the same field with little upgrades. 2 years ago, Private money was used to resod the infield. That infield, due to broken sprinklers, grubs, neglect, mostly because it is a public field and open to anyone to use, will need drastic upkeep, or it will be dangerous to play on. Think about standing at a third with a hard grounder on uneven ground. Recipe for disastrous injury. Don McQuarrie, coach of Novato High School, is in his second year. He is trying to turn around a once proud organization. He has devoted time, energy, and money to this program. He is organizing teams for students to play on during the off season. He has put together teams for athletes to play on during the summer, fall, and winter. This has not been happening by a coach for Novato for at least 6 years, since before my oldest son was a freshman. This type of commitment needs to be fostered and helped by the administration. Somebody with his passion for this program does not come along often. With help, he can turn Novato High School baseball into something that can make the school proud and stop the bleeding of kids seeking to transfer to other districts to choose private schools. My freshman son has played baseball since he was 6 years old. He has played in many different teams. He had opportunities to go to San Marin or Marin Catholic, and as a family, we chose to stay at Novato. Many families have chosen not to stay in their public home district, primarily because the family wishes to play for a better skilled team and or perceived better supported athletic program. My son played on Frost's football team, is now on freshman basketball, and will play baseball team in the spring. He's doing his part as an athlete to turn the culture of boys athletics. Let's help him and all other student athletes and upgrade the facilities needed. If something is not done now to foster and support Novato High School baseball, I'm afraid that numbers will continue to decline. Families are choosing other choice of schools. We are in a vicious cycle that needs to be turned around, or we will lose money and more kids every year. This is absolutely happening. Many of my son's teammates over the years are choosing San Marin or Marin Catholic solely on athletic success of these programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, John Arata. And if anyone else wants to speak, please fill this out, blue card out, and bring it up to Gladys. I saw you filling out that. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your time. I was one of the parents out redoing the baseball field at Novato. I think people have to understand where the parents and the families are coming from. Before we went out to redo the field, we sent letters to the athletic director. It's dangerous, it's unplayable, it's unsafe. Do you remember the response we got? Was nothing. Nothing. When you're telling them that an organized activity that Novato puts on for their students is unsafe. Can you think of any other time in your experience in a school where you told them there was a dangerous situation and you were completely ignored? I mean, I hear this talk of air conditioning, and I think it's a great idea. My son wrote a paper on it for the school newspaper that was published. But I think you probably could do a study, and on that graph you saw where it showed the temperatures, I'll bet you significantly higher temperatures are on the west side of the classrooms in the afternoon. So what does that tell you? In the morning, the sun doesn't affect anybody adversely. So the classrooms on the east side of the schools could wait for a phase 2 implementation. The kids on the baseball field could share the field with the other sports. They could learn to accept different ways of people enjoying themselves. They could learn the benefit of sharing resources. And they could see themselves be put forth as a priority as opposed to ignored. For the life of me, I don't understand why the practice fields have to be located away from the baseball field when we have such a bad baseball field. I know Greg's been out there. He's got his hands dirty working on the weekends. I see lots of people out here. I know San Marin does a tremendous job. But it's the only time that you have parents have to take things into their own hands. And I think the money, it may be there, it may not, but really what I see is an opportunity to look at, does every single classroom require the same AC system in every single school? Because in my own home, it's 2 stories. AC upstairs, for sure. AC downstairs, don't need it. You know, I think if you looked at that, and I'm just a contractor by trade, so for what it's worth, it's free advice. If you looked at that, I'll bet you could identify statistically which classrooms just don't need air conditioning. Eliminate those, and you'd find that you could fund the classrooms that do, that get excessively high. I know there's roofing products now that are more efficient. They don't get hot. And I know there's a lot of opportunities to look at alternatives to 100% air conditioning. I think that's where the money is to solve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And then James, and you'll have to pronounce your name, your last name. I don't even want to.
Don't want to try it. Hello, I'm James Faccioni.
Thanks.
Born and raised in Novato, graduated from Novato High years ago. Coached basketball at Novato High for 7-8 years, and currently into my 12th season right now, coaching baseball at San Marin. Like I said, born and raised in this town, so I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. I remember back when I was in high school, we were trying to get lights in the football field at Novato High. That never happened, obviously. A tough project. But basically what I'm here tonight just to reiterate how far behind I think the city of Novato and the school district of sports, athletic-wise, how far behind we are in the rest of the county, neighboring counties. Our facilities are they're hurting. Over the last few years, I've put in a lot of time. I've been very fortunate to have a parent support, friend support, last few years more than ever. And it's appreciative to how much time and effort and financially how much money has been put into the facilities. The frustrating part is it's not coming back on the other end from the school, and you know the facilities aren't being maintained properly. Going turf, something I've always kind of fought against because I'm a natural baseball field guy, but now it's to the point where I have a family. I have 2 kids that are coming up in the Novato School District, and I can't keep up with everything that is going to be needed done to keep the field going. It hurt my feelings a little bit to hear how we're rated the 2 worst facilities in the county, because I know how much time and effort's gone in, by the coaches and the parents. But unfortunately, some of that's true. A lot of people don't like coming to our place to play. It's dangerous. Back in 2009, we had 2 kids. One kid blew out his knee. Another kid dislocated his ankle by playing at our fields from gopher holes, sliding into unmaintained bases and fields. So bottom line is, I think the turf idea is great. No disrespect with the plan coming forward here for Novato, but once again, if San Marin's having great issues on the upper field, they're going to have great issues with this field that is presented trying to combine the baseball field. Just knowing from where the baseball field is going to that, what I call the Tibby Bango field, because years ago it was named after the soccer coach. But that's just a big upgrade. It'd be a great idea, but I just don't know if that's possible. But I do wish to come together with a better plan for both schools. I know everyone's fighting. If something gets done at one school, it's got to be done at the other school. Whatever, equal opportunity for both. I just hope that we can go forward with a better plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, I think the last card is Nick Lynham. Welcome.
And I think I'll be short and sweet. I know everybody's getting ready for dinner. I want to commend you all. It can't be easy to try to find all this money for all these things that need to be done in Novato. I'm a Novato High parent, but I'm a Novato parent too. All my friends I see from San Marin are here. I know specifically this is talking about the Novato field. But it reaches across both schools. I've also had 3 kids go through the school. All have played multiple sports, football, baseball. I think it would be a travesty, and I think it would be short-sighted if you didn't expand this position and turf the baseball field. As we've talked about, several people have talked about the usage, what it can do for the community. We've all seen, I've personally seen the highs of a good sports program at Novato High, the football program when we were on top. It brings the community together. We can do that again with the baseball community. We can't do it with the field that we've got right now, both at Novato or San Marin. It's driving people away. We lose kids to Marin Catholic, we lose kids to St. Vincent's, and there's a reason for it, and it's the field conditions are deplorable. I was out there with John, as were many of the people in this room, digging, hoeing, cutting, fixing the field. Every year I do it. I don't mind doing it because it's for the kids. But at some point you have to stop. The amount of maintenance costs that are involved in this thing are astronomical. And when you amortize that over the cost of a turf field, I'm sure you'll get your money back. And then coupled with that, as Kevin said, all of the attractive elements that you can promote for tournaments. To me, it's a no-brainer, and I urge you to vote no on this measure. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming and taking time to comment. Trustee Mack, I'm going to bring it back to the board. Trustee Mack, we'll start with you, and then Trustee Scott.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Really appreciate it. As everybody knows on the board as well, I'm kind of deeply involved in this, but I'm also, I want to make clear, deeply involved with both San Marin and Novato athletics overall. And so while I really appreciate the effort that was put into this plan, I know it was basically trying to make something work within a very tight budget, and we still weren't able to hit it. And also the urgency of getting this project going ASAP, because we're trying to hit basically a go live, if you will, of this project, whatever it is, by this time next year, so that it's ready for use by soccer next winter, which is it's kind of started this whole thing. But all that said, I'm a no vote on the current plan. My reasoning, really, there's two main points. One, we need to support all the sports, and not just double down on soccer and really lacrosse. Basically, you know, to be blunt, if varsity baseball and softball, remember, softball too. We can't just talk about baseball, we got softball too. If varsity baseball and softball are going to be required to play in the mud, then I see no reason why JV and frosh soccer can't do the same. That's what we're looking at. Now, that said, I'm eager to get this project going, and I'm eager to jump on this and turn this around and still make it by next winter. And here's some things that I think that we could do that would get us there. First off, I think right out of the gate, from a funding perspective, for all the projects we got in these books, we need to take a long, hard look at potentially limiting the field projects at the two middle schools to just all-weather tracks. That's the most important thing they need. They got to have that. And effectively take those turf dollars and use them to supplement the two high schools. Now, here's my reasoning for that. One, it serves more students. Both the high schools have more students than the middle schools. Two, it serves them longer. They get to use these fields for 4 years instead of 3. And last but not least, it serves them at a higher level of CIF competition versus PE. So I really do think that while some might say we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, we're not. These same kids are going to get access to this turf. It's just going to be in their high school years, and they're going to be able to use it later at a higher level. That said, if we could do that, now we have a bigger pot to work with. And what I propose is that we install turf at both the softball diamond as well as the baseball diamond, where with the baseball diamond, you use a temporary fence, you have the soccer, full regulation soccer field on the outfield, and you have a movable fence that can be moved in during baseball and moved out for soccer. And what that does is it gives soccer a regulation field. You would put the bleachers out in the outfield on the far side so that people can watch it if it's a game. You could have a dual-use scoreboard. And in the end, you're now serving everybody, not just doubling down on the sports that are already getting turf and leaving softball and baseball with nothing. And let's see what else I was going to say. the main point about this is an opportunity that we're not going to see for decades. That's why you see so many people here. When they found out that this was happening, they realized there's never going to be another chance, at least maybe in their lifetimes, but certainly decades, that we'll have a chance to really realistically look at turfing the baseball diamonds. So once again, I'm a no vote on this. I really respect the work that's been done. I appreciate the need, but I think we can do better, and I want to do it quickly if we can. And I do believe Carducci's ready to do that. They have all the specs in there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, one last thing I forgot to say. I did ask specifically about moving dirt. If you go to the baseball diamond, it's already graded. You do not have to worry about the 5-foot grading difference. Also, you don't have to worry about the water remediation. Now, granted, there is some slope that goes down on that first red line, but it's not going to be the same kind of level. So, and one last thing to possibly consider, maybe as an option, is maybe limit the turfing to just the outfields for both the softball field and the baseball diamond, then save some costs. But at the same time, still have a turf soccer field in the outfield. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Scott.
So I have a question I'm not sure you have the answer to, Yancey, but I'm curious, if we were to rent this facility out, what would that revenue look like? Do you have any idea? If some of the, I was writing down some of the venues that might rent it out as far as for camps. I'm just curious what that might look like in terms of some offset costs.
So I think it's important to note around all rental fields. Sorry, to answer your question, I don't know what the rental will be.
Sure.
I know that turf fields, whether they be soccer fields or baseball fields, are in high demand, as the cities in Marin County don't offer a lot of all-weather fields for teams to play in, whether that be children or adult. One thing I will say, and it pains me as the finance person, is that we are limited by the Civic Center Act in California on what we can charge and what those field fees can be used for. And so the limit of what we can charge for is the maintenance cost, and then a small portion for replacement cost. And so it is important to note turf fields are cheaper on operational costs as you from year to year, because you don't need to mow them, you don't need to water them, but they do need to be replaced. Our fields at both San Marin and Novato High are coming to the end of their useful life. In fact, they've held up very well, but will need to be replaced. All you need to do is look one town down in Terra Linda, which you can see their field is shuttered for the rest of the season. So you do need to put in replacement for those, and for a field, for a regular field, you're talking $750,000 on a replacement cost. So the Civic Center Act would require us to put those replacement costs in a separate fund that could only be used for the replacement of those fields.
Okay, and then one last piece. Matt, I see you in the back of the room. Do you have any comments? You're the principal of the school. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. I'd like to hear from you. Sorry. I know. I'm just curious.
Matt Baldwin, our principal at Novato High.
I can't disagree with anything that's been said tonight.
Okay.
I have vast experience in athletics all up and down the state of California, having played and coached and been an assistant principal for senior athletics and gone to a lot of venues and events and even officiated. And I can't disagree with how bad our baseball fields are. Okay. So that's one thing. How we find a funding source or find a way to pay for that, I agree with Greg in trying to be as creative as humanly possible and look at what we can do. I do think it's tough to go out there. I mean, that's the second thing I noticed when I got to Novato High School was I saw this beautiful, little house on the prairie out, amazing space out there that we can do, anything with. But the second thing I noticed was the baseball field was beyond repair. And now we're going into our 4th season with me being there. And, you know, but there's not a lot that can be done because there's not funding to do it. The good news now that we have this bond measure, how can we move things to be creative and make it happen for the kids? And I will validate everything that's been said from the parents that they've worked tirelessly to go out there, and I know Greg included, to go out there and make sure that it is serviceable for kids. And that infield was beautiful. But yes, I mean, something needs to be done. I mean, I'll say across the board, just athletics in general, all of our facilities, with the exception of the tennis courts, are in need of upgrades. So it'd be wonderful if we can address a couple of them. I would say I would fight back on the soccer field a little bit, and I know, Greg, you were saying that we need to do it, but it's absolutely essential. We have to do the soccer field, and it can't be looked at as a supplementary. It's not. We're not going to have lights ever, as far as I'm concerned, in Novato High School. So we have to have multiple fields to house these teams, and have a safe environment for those kids to practice. And physical education was kind of scoffed at, but that's unbelievably important. Most of our kids are locked in gyms all day long for PE because they don't have places to go outside. And with living in Novato and being, you know, sunny several days a year, they need to be outside, and there's nowhere for them to go. So PE is a big deal for me. And so, yeah, I agree with everything. I think I would love to be creative and work with everyone to see what we can come up with. The one thing I do just caution everybody on, that there was a lengthy, amazing process where everyone was involved for over a year to come up with the priorities for the facility master plan. Now, I think our baseball program was in transition at that time. And so I have to cut the baseball family a little bit of you know, cut them a break a little bit, because now we have a great coach, a great community that's willing to kind of step up, and they've always been stepping up. But our coach has been there; he's going to be there, and he's doing a great job. And I just want to make sure that we support them. So,
okay. If I may, one more question, Tom.
Of course.
And Yancey, this might be for you. If we were to work on what Trustee Max suggested, can you ballpark some costs? Can we put that together in time? Is it a doable deal? Help us help the kids.
So rough order of magnitude of cost of that is probably $5 million per high school, as opposed, so that's $10 million overall, as opposed to what's now here, which if you assume that the San Marin is similar to this, that's an increase of $5 million for the fields.
Can you expand on what that covers?
That covering.
That's two separate fields, or combining them?
That would be two separate fields for baseball and for softball.
But with the soccer in the outfield.
And putting soccer in the outfield. It's important to note, I can't promise that you actually can fit soccer in the outfield at Novato High School. I think it's likely when we looked at, but I can't promise you that we can. I think it's very clear that we cannot fit a regulation field in the outfield of the San Marin baseball field, given the dimensions and what we're working with in back of the field. So that is not necessarily an option. So depending on how you look at it, you potentially would have to add $2.5 million of additional cost to get a full practice field at San Marin. Now, this is these numbers, are estimates at this time. But as Todd noted, for turf fields, it is one of the in terms of it's all a square footage game of what you're playing in terms of costs. So you're talking probably an additional $5 million.
And turnaround?
Turnaround, I doubt that we could get a field ready for next year's soccer if we were doing a facility like that. I mean, it took a couple months at least of planning to build this, which is a relatively simple field, as they've noted. It's a universal field for 3 sports. I think you could have it ready a year after that if if that was what the board wanted to do.
So if the board elected not to do this project now, I'm just trying to scale out here, and we went with something that served all of it, you're saying that that would be a year out. What does that do to our programs? Because I know soccer's moving, or is moved. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Trustee Miller? Or if not,
Couple of questions. So we're looking at the Novato High slide, and I'm trying to relate that to the San Marin slide. So maybe can we look at that slide just for a few seconds?
We can pull up the facilities master plan pretty easily,
Or this? No, these are fine. I think. If it doesn't answer the question, your choice. But let me see if I can ask.
Yeah,
Mike.
I agree.
What? I was doing fine before. I was looking at the picture in this
from
your slide.
can you pull up
packet.
Google Earth on that?
You want to do Google Earth? I got it, actually. Sorry.
Yeah. It's on page unnumbered. It says San Marin High School practice turf field.
Oh, you want that picture?
Yeah, that's the one we've all seen. So maybe we can in the PowerPoint deck.
What did you say?
Perfect. So on this slide, could you show here the same thing we saw for Novato High? Where is the intended practice turf going to go?
I think it's important that actually has not been finalized. We are still working on that.
So if you have two
initially,
choices, two or three-
initially it had been planned for the outfield potentially on the facilities master plan.
Okay.
But given the 9 feet elevation difference between home plate and the right field foul pole, that took that out of. And so we've been looking at different options.
It added a lot of cost to it. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it's a lot more expensive than you imagined.
It's a lot more expensive, and now you have to, if the field was level, you could have potentially left it in the outfield not maybe ideal. But now if you want to keep, they had an interest in keeping their secondary practice baseball field, that becomes much more expensive.
Oh, okay. So if you do put the soccer field in the outfield there, and you have to deal with that 9-foot elevation difference, what you've done to the ball field now makes it is a mess, because you got to grade all of it, or you can't just grade half of it.
You're gonna have to bury the current field just in moving the dirt.
Or take everything down, and some engineer needs to look at it. We're not going to solve it tonight at the board meeting, but okay. So what we have for the San Marin solution is, I'm going on your words. You said we have a solution to put a second soccer field at San Marin, but you don't get a second baseball field at all. You only get one baseball field, and you get the soccer field down. You get the baseball field up there by the stadium, that one, yes, and you get the softball field down at the lower corner there, and that's what you got, and maybe a second lacrosse soccer play field up there, maybe. Okay, and you haven't figured it out yet. It's basically
We haven't figured it out, given that the approval of the lights has made the scheduling a little bit different at the two sites.
Okay, so given that there's lights, there's choices in terms of offering programs at San Marin that are not available at Novato High, and so as the principal pointed out, he needs athletic fields, and you can't. I heard tonight you can't. You got to run them in parallel, because you got to run it when the sun's up.
The need at Novato High for a secondary field during soccer season, I believe, is significant.
Okay. So let's go back to the Novato High one. Thank you. I'm trying to find it here so I can.
you want me to?
It's a couple of slides away from.
Can I just say something real quick about that?
Yeah, no, please, Matt.
The other thing is that in the spring, you've got all three sports going at the same time. So if we have track and we have lacrosse and we have baseball going at the same time, if the auxiliary field is on the baseball field, then there's nowhere for lacrosse to go. So
Yeah.
we need to have three different.
Yeah, okay.
If we have baseball, lacrosse, and track going at the same time in the spring, and baseball's playing, then they can't use, lacrosse can't use the auxiliary field. And track is up there. We have 3 meets this year at home. So if they're even running a practice, a track practice, which they do, hopefully they're doing it every day, we need to have 3 separate facilities.
So this was-
that's another reason for the auxiliary field.
20 years ago, this was simple because the number of athletic programs that Novato offered the students of Novato was half the number of teams that currently play.
Sure.
So the way you solve the athletic problem is you just have the number of players, and then the physical facilities come close to meeting the needs. But that's not true. We moved, McGinnis Park has been built, all the adult baseball moved off of the Novato fields. We've got facilities that are now available to play, and the programs have expanded. We better serve the students. It's better to the community. These are good things that have happened, but we are pushing up against this. And your point is, even if you tried to move that around and move it on top of a ball field, now you've still got a problem. The real answer, according to what you just said, is this field gets built, and we also turf the softball field, and we also turf the hardball field, so that there's multiple venues. So you have 2 soccer, lacrosse, baseball, football fields, one a practice, one a stadium, and also the 2 baseball diamonds are available. That would be be what you would want.
Well, of course.
Well, we're doing some dreaming
Don't twist
here,
my arm.
'cause everything we're talking about here, we don't have money for. So
yeah,
we're dreaming beyond what we can afford.
I'm just telling you what we deal with.
Yeah, no, well, and so what I'm concerned is, in the process of going for best, we're giving up better, or we're giving up good for great. So to stop this process and go for a whole nother year and reconsider this whole thing and talk about doubling the cost, we heard 10 million versus 5 million for the 2 fields. We maybe the right solution is to do this and solve this problem, and then talk about working on getting turf for the 2 baseball diamonds, the softball diamond and the hardball diamond, and address the real problem, which is give them a space to work on, as opposed to saying, well, let's stop this because we could use that money for our project. So my concern is that in order to get best, we're giving up better, and I don't like the way this lays on the field. I have my own issues with that. It kind of gives up a lot of field, but it's a solution for your immediate problem. It solves a bunch of sports problems that we have. Teams get to play. It doesn't do baseball what they need. It doesn't. I got that. But then we can, I think it leaves the footprint so we can solve that problem separately some other time, I think.
But I would agree with what other people said tonight, is that it does need to, it's inevitable that it needs to be dealt with at some point.
Yep.
The baseball field needs to be.
Yeah, okay.
I know you guys know.
I don't want to take that away. I mean, these people are out there every weekend working on making sure it's playable. I did my turn at that, and you guys are doing your turn, but I got it.
All right,
Thank you. I got that.
Ross? Okay, let me bring it back to the board. Thank you, Trustee Nell. I know you had your hand up, and then Trustee Aguila. You were first. If you want to go first.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot of we need. This is embarrassing. As a trustee, I want this to get fixed ASAP, and I'm hearing a lot of it's horrible, it's not safe, it just needs fixing, and so I acknowledge that, I hear that, but I'm also hearing a lot of we don't know, who knows, we're not ready yet, I'm not sure. There was a lot of questions that have been asked that we're not quite. We don't quite have the answers to. There's new ideas. Possible solutions that maybe we haven't talked about. So I don't want to vote no for it, but I think that, I know you're not calling for a vote yet, but I mean, I could change my mind later, but I'm just saying, I think we could look at it and bring it back and talk more and just look at some of the ideas and that have been brought up, and so we can do this pronto.
All right, thank you. Trustee Nell.
Yeah, I care a lot about this subject, and I think athletics is important, and I don't want to spend a lot of time having people listen to me on this particular issue, so I'll try to keep it brief. One, staff, you guys, I take responsibility for putting you between a rock and a hard place. I mean, here, do $10 million worth with $2 million, and that's not fair. You guys worked hard, and we've had conversations, and I know you want to solve the problem. But I just think we're not ready. I cannot support this plan at this point. I think we're going to have to address San Marin as part of it. We're going to have to address the girls' softball. We have Title IX issues. We haven't even talked about that. So, and the baseball situation is desperate, obviously. So I know we have a problem. Expediency is an issue, but I don't want to sink to the lowest common denominator to get something done for that sake, when I think if we just can go back to the drawing board, we have to find some more money. Maybe it's not a Cadillac solution, but there's just no way I can support this plan as proposed at this point. So I'm going to recommend that we come back with a more all-encompassing thing. I look at the original site plans, and I see these green spots on there as, placeholders for dollar amounts. And we've already talked about escalation, things are going up, so I don't know why we wouldn't be talking about that here, and I know we are. I also see things on these plans that I know we're not going to do. I'm pretty sure we're not going to do. So I'm tired. I hope everyone understands, but I don't want to do anything we're gonna be sorry about later. We're just not ready. We're gonna have to go back, get more people together, and try to come up with a better idea. And I don't want to do one site without the other. To me, you're just gonna, because we'll proceed with this Novato High thing, and then you're gonna come back and say we need $9 million to do San Marin just to get what Novato High has. That's a possibility. So let's just do it all. Let's see what it all costs, and then we can start to pare it down to what we can afford. But at least everybody gets something. And quite frankly, I'm just amazed that nobody has even brought up, well, what are we going to do about these baseball fields? What would we have done with these baseball fields? So we're not ready, you guys. I would suggest to the board that we ask staff to come back with a better plan that includes everything, and it looks farther down the future, includes San Marin.
Thank you, Trustee Nell. Trustee Butler? Sure. And then I'll go.
I agree with most of what Trustee Nell said and other trustees. Coming into this meeting, I was hesitant on what I was seeing, but I thought, what boils down to, we don't have the money in the district's budget to say, okay, we'll come up with $8 million more to cover the difference. It's not there. Look at our unaudited actuals. Look at our first interim. There is no money. 80% of our budget is salaries. And we have to take care of what's happening in the classroom. That's my number one priority. And sports is a big part of a student's education. I totally get that. So to stop this and not move forward, you're probably looking at, based on what I hear, is two cycles of maybe nothing yet until we can come up with a real good plan that you're looking at, that many have spoke to. And that means going back to this budget of each person's school and saying, what are you going to take out of, like I said, with the air conditioning? So Novato High has air conditioning at $2.5 million. Do you want air conditioning, or do you want a baseball, turf, soccer, lacrosse, whatever field? Those are going to be the conversations at the school site, because we just don't have it at the district level. There is nothing there. So I am interested, though, so I just want to be clear on, if we go back to the table, I think it's going to be a couple years before we see anything. And I would like to see both sites simultaneously be taken care of and done at the same time if we can. Let's get both things done. So I'm interested. I cannot move forward with what's been presented because I think there are other options out there, and I need to know exactly what those are. And that puts a bind in this next season for soccer and so forth. So, but I just I need to know more information based on what I heard tonight from you guys, based on what I heard from other trustees. We need to come back and do this the right way. So I think that means more time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Can I
we
ask,
only have one shot at
I have a
this.
couple of comments, but can I ask Debbie, clarifying
Yeah.
what specifically you might direct staff to come back with? So they.
Well, I creating the, what do we do with the baseball field? How do we fix that? Is that viable to put the turf field on the baseball field and have multiple options there of playability, baseball, lacrosse, soccer? You're still looking at San Marin, so what is going to be the options for San Marin? What if we did that field and turfed the baseball field? And that means you're turfing the softball field. I mean, this is going to be a lot of dollars. So we kind of need to look at all that because you spoke to Title IX that kicks in. We need to see what all of those options are. So that's just what here's if you had everything that you want, here is what we potentially could do, here's what we probably can only do. So I'm kind of looking for that. I know that's a lot of work for you guys, and I'm sorry about that. But again, I want to do it right, and hopefully the community and parents understand that.
And one more option to add to that list would be one that preserves dirt infields. So you're only turfing the outfields.
Greg.
Yeah. No, just the dirt.
All right, I just want to add my 2 cents.
No, I mean, just saying, it reduces the turf, so, the square footage.
The square footage, so it's
I
cheaper.
agree with a lot of the comments that were made tonight, and I certainly sympathize with many of you and all of you that have spoken to this tonight. But I think we've spoken on many occasions at this table about the situation with the budget now and what we're looking at in terms of increases to our pension costs and many other things. And when we're looking specifically at this bond money, just a short while ago at this table, we spoke about how we're going to pay for an increase in cost for air conditioning at some schools. Well, it's no different here. I don't see the difference. I certainly acknowledge the need. There clearly is, and I appreciate Matt coming and speaking to that. I know that. I would support going ahead with this soccer field, but if more information is forthcoming, then that would be fine too. But I would support this. I'm afraid when we start the baseball field and Title IX, once again, it's now you're doing softball and, incrementally now you're increasing your costs. Where's that money come from? I would be interested in, however, looking to mitigate the situation now, if staff could come back with some way that the parents and students, whomever, would not have to be spending all their time going and doing all these things. If the district could maybe kick in and bring it up to a higher level that's maybe tolerable until such time as we as a board decide to include it. So I would like to see that as one trustee. Thanks. Any more? Trustee Nell, and then Trustee Miller, and then Trustee Aguilar.
Just briefly, one of the things we were asked about was the CEQA exemption, and I want to talk about that separately, unrelated to anything. I think we need to have I don't want to set a precedent on a single project around CEQA. So I just want to get that out there, that we talk about that at some point. On the issue of the budget, I think it's right. We have a very, very tight operating budget. We don't have the money to fix or replace these playing fields out of our operating general fund budget. The only place we're going to get the money to fix these fields once and for all and to provide the educational services we're supposed to is to find it within these funds. And I think you're right. We did set some precedent tonight about how we would go about rearranging things, like for air conditioning, that are important. So it's there. This is where the money is and where it's intended to be used. It's because we have to be honest with ourselves. There is no other way that we're going to resod, regrade, redrain, re-irrigate 4 fields, two baseball, 2 softball. Well, I think it's 2 hardball fields at San Marin and a softball and a baseball field at Novato. So we've got to do it here. I want to be efficient, obviously, but we need to take care of this problem within this bond, because otherwise it will not happen, and we'll be talking about canceling these programs.
Russ.
So when we had this conversation a year ago about, oh my God, we have to get these fields done, I was the one that was saying, look, we'll play in the mud, we'll make it work. We've made it work before, and I think to Trustee Butler's point, we don't get to spend the money twice. We only get to spend it once. We need to get this right. I think having a range of alternatives, at least at a conceptual design level laid out, maybe not at as fine as some of this is done, but by square footage estimates of the different ways to put this together will be valuable to the community and to us. And it's asking staff to do some additional work. I expect we will at least lose a year in terms of hitting our dates. But I think that kind of thoughtful consideration for the engineering of this makes sense. My concern is, as if we talk about moving money from and assuming, and we just say whatever a campus has, that's the money we're going to move around within campus. So if you don't want a performing arts center and you want to move money out of that and put it in ball fields, then the people in this room need to include the people in the performing arts center. We're not going to have the conversation with just one constituency and solve the problem in that way. We need to have, and some of that conversation is going to, Matt, I'm sorry, is going to occur on the campus under this principal's leadership. But those kinds of balanced choices that we've been working at for 2 years got us to exactly where we are here. And we're saying, let's go back and sharpen the pencil again. And I think that's a good idea to get more data, but it can't be any one group. It can't be just athletics. It can't be just baseball. It can't be just performing arts. It can't be just ROTC. As you guys have said, you know, we got an amazing ROTC program. We've got an amazing sports program. We wish we had better fields. We were able to afford a turf field 15 years ago, and now we're talking about a second turf field at each site. Novato is not San Mateo. Houses in San Mateo cost $5 million a piece, and in Novato they don't. We don't have the tax base to support the kind of fancy facilities that they have in those. We have to do the best we can in the small community we live in, and you can't take it out of teachers' salaries. We do the best to make sure our faculty have a livable wage to teach here, that we can pay for coaches and that we can pay for science teachers. This is not going to come out of thin air. It's going to work based on all of us working together. I look forward to staff having some more detail. That's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to let us have a better conversation. It's not going to find the money. So I support Trustee Butler's view, which is let's get some more data. Let's chew on this a little bit, see where we go, but understand there is no more money. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Trustee Aguilar.
Yeah, we talked about how we have amazing programs, and I also would like to add that our students are amazing. And in fact, our soccer students in the team for this year at San Marin, they're going to win this year with holes and gophers or no gophers. The kids are talented and they're very gifted. And no matter what the fields will look like, you know, they continue to be careful, but they are very talented and they will win this year. I know they will.
That's your crystal ball. That's good. I know we're all rooting for them too. Thank you. Anyone else comment?
My only question is, does staff have enough direction from us? I'm going to ask the
I'm getting heads nodded that is in fact the case, so, Yancey?
Yeah, I think we have enough.
You got everything?
Direction, yeah. Mr. Woolard, is the best note taker in the
Takes good
business.
notes. His printing is excellent.
I think it's that Coast Guard upbringing. But I do want to note, just to set expectations, that this is the low cost option. That any option we're going to bring to you is going to be more expensive and likely significantly more expensive. Just to set expectations that when we come back, we're likely going to come back to you. We're definitely not going to come back to you with less. And we might be able to come up with some more flexibility, and we might be able to come up with some, additional creativity. But that additional flexibility is going to come at a not insignificant cost.
And just to be clear, we've been talking about escalation costs. So the longer we wait, that also increases the cost. Well,
Yeah. So doing this field a year from now is going to cost somewhere between 5 to 10% more than it costs now to do, even if you do the same field.
So am I gathering the will of the board is that we ask staff to come back to us probably in the December 5th meeting? We're not ready to take action tonight on this. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, and to talk to the sites. They have to go back to the sites, and
Exactly.
the principal needs to be included in that. If not, whoever else, the athletic director, multitude of people that need. I don't know if December is going to be. No, I don't think so.
I was just like,
That's pretty aggressive, is right. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave that to staff. As long as staff knows what we're asking, and that's a good point. If you can fit it in, great.
Because they may, the community may not like the answer that or the decision we make when you come back, because it's just too costly. I mean, it's just, so I need to make sure everybody's understood as part of that conversation when you.
Sure. I was just gonna say, just to be clear, you want us to bring this back, excuse me, one of the December meetings? No, I just. Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
You're in the driver's seat, so whatever you need to get this information.
We're gonna get on it.
That's all we need.
I've heard a lot of great ideas, so we have some.
December 5th, if you can. I don't know.
Christmas early.
All right, trustees, I guess that brings, thank you, staff, for a great report, great several reports, and that concludes the board meeting.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you back here on December 5th. We're just bringing it forward, tabling it, bringing it forward.
It was already approved at the beginning of the meeting.